don't have Tom, and I have not seen an email from him, so I'm not sure. Doesn't appear to be reaching out that he has any technical difficulties. So perhaps something came up and he's not available to attend tonight.
Okay, well, let's get going. We're a little late anyway. We're 4 minutes late. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Harbor Commission. Can I get a roll call, please?
You can, and as always, I'll take you as the order on the screen. Commissioner Carlson.
We got the
muted here.
Yeah, there we go. Commissioner Callahan.
Here.
Commissioner Kilroy.
Here.
Commissioner Walters.
Here.
Commissioner Kazan.
Here.
Chair Light.
Here. Okay, Vicki, would you mind leading us in a salute to the flag?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, entertain a movement to approve the order of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, we'll go with this order. I don't believe there's any blue folder items. We talked about that before, Stephen.
That's correct. For the record, we do not have any blue folder items tonight.
Okay, now jump to item F, the consent calendar. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for July 12th? Or does anyone have comments to it?
Should we? Okay.
Okay, so we got the motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion before we vote? Okay, anybody opposed to approving it as written? Okay. So let's go to the, let's see, approval of the affidavit. Can I get a motion to approve the affidavit?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay. Let's see, we have no excluded consent calendar items, so we'll jump to item H, public participation on non-agenda items. So Stephen, you did say you might have some e-comments and emails. I don't know if they fit here or elsewhere.
The three e-comments that we have thus far look like they're all related to agenda item L1.
Okay.
Unless Lori, you see any others on there.
No, I do not. And I don't see any comments for H1 either.
Oh, okay. Then maybe I'll read those into the record if they don't materialize here soon.
Okay, and anybody live on the net who wants to speak to non-agenda items?
There are 6 attendees. If there's anyone that wants to speak on non-agenda items, I would ask them to raise their hand. And I don't see anyone raising their hand. So I think we're okay to move to the next agenda item.
Okay, I don't believe there's any action we're taking tonight that would require us to reveal any ex parte communications. Do you see anything, Stephen, that we might?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, no public hearings, no items continued from previous agendas. So we'll jump right down to L and go right into that's items for discussion prior to action. And L1 is the discussion and possible action regarding the draft waterfront outdoor dining permit program for King Harbor.
Great. So thank you, Chair Light and members of the Harbor Commission. We're here again to talk about the outdoor dining program. We were last here chatting with you in May before the summer began about where we were with the program at that point. We've made some progress in terms of putting together some guidelines, which we'll go through shortly, and talk a little bit about where we see this heading. And our goal tonight is really to just continue to get some input from you. You know, I think just, to back up, the temporary use permit process, as you know, was a response at the pier, was a response to COVID and the fact that we were having restrictions on capacity for indoor dining. The TUPs were designed originally to expire when the orders were lifted. And the goal of the TUP program was not necessarily to expand the operating footprint of the restaurants, but really to just provide them outdoor space so that they could maintain their existing capacity and try to serve the same number of guests as they previously were serving. The expectation was none of us envisioned that the TUP program would be going on this long and that we would be continuing to have this conversation. And once the program ended, the expectation was that the area currently being used for the outdoor dining program would be returned to its previous condition. Sometimes good things come from difficult circumstances. Due to the popularity of the outdoor dining program, our office received several requests to make the outdoor dining a permanent feature of the pier itself. So we came to you on May 10th, as I mentioned earlier, to really kind of run that idea by you, see if the Harbor Commission was supportive of maintaining a more permanent outdoor dining presence, talk a little bit about some of the program elements at that time, and then you were directed to go back and actually develop a set of permit guidelines that we could then share with you. And that's really what you have in front of you tonight. Attached to your packet is those guidelines. And the guidelines that you see really focus on the International Boardwalk. And when you look at the maps and the diagrammatic components, since that's where the lion's share of the outdoor dining activity is occurring. But the guidelines are flexible enough, other than the restrictions of the use spaces themselves, where we kind of categorize the spaces. But a lot of the programmatic elements could be used for some of the other areas of the pier where, maybe we don't have a big area like the International Boardwalk, but somebody wants to do outdoor dining close to their premises. These basic guidelines could be supplied and used for other areas of the pier. So we have a little PowerPoint presentation here, and what I'd like to do is just share my screen with you if I can make this work. So give me 1 second. That's not the right process. So we'll try this one more time. There we go. So and let me pull up the outdoor dining program. There we go. Is that visible on people's screens? Doesn't look like it is.
No.
No.
Let me try this again.
There you go.
Yeah, good.
Oh, good deal. This is a very short presentation, so we'll kind of get right into this. Giving you the background on the outdoor dining permit program for King Harbor. So what we're looking at now tonight is to talk to you about a framework going forward. And I just want to remind everybody, because we did get some public comments, that we're not looking to implement something tomorrow. What we really want to be doing is looking to the future here. Our hope and prayer is that at some point the temporary use permit and the orders will be lifted. And so as we transition from what was intended to be a much shorter term use to something that could be a more permanent component of the waterfront going forward, we think it's important to start to set a framework on how that could be moving forward. So my staff, Lori, Elizabeth, myself, Leonardo Property Management, we were out at the pier. Gosh, I guess that was last week, maybe the beginning part of last week or the late part of the week before, and kind of looking at the spaces that were up on the International Boardwalk, taking some measurements, look at how the spaces are being currently configured and being used. And based on what we saw up there, we came up with some guidelines in terms of how we think the program could work going forward. We measured everything out, and we think what you could create up there are 10 designated outdoor spaces, and that would be kind of across the whole International Boardwalk and wrapping around the far end down at the Najas and paddle house end of the International Boardwalk. Between that and the length of the International Boardwalk, you can fit about 10 spaces that measure 48 by 15 feet, and that's roughly the distance that you see in the photo here in terms of width. That might be 16 feet. Most people are using 8-foot on center posts. So you're seeing, kind of 2 board lengths of 8 feet. So that's probably 16 feet in width in that bottom photo sticking out in there. Still gives some room for a pedestrian path. Still gives room outside of those bollards to the bike path that's out there. We'd like to see it skinnied up a little bit if that's possible, down to about 15 feet. It gives you a little more space out on that public walkway where we did get some criticism that it was getting crowded and congested and at times on that public walkway. So what we're thinking are spaces that are about 48 by 15 feet. Now, what you have out there are a broad range of sizes. The smallest one is 48 by 15 feet, but you've got people going into well over 100 feet. If you were to go down and look at Naja's current space that's out there, it's exceptionally long in terms of the amount of space that's being occupied. And so what we've said is let's have the base designated outdoor space be this 48 by 15, 720 square feet. And then we did put a provision in the guidelines that says if a restaurant would like to apply for an additional pod, so that would take them to, basically 96 feet or some variation in between, we would look at that on a case-by-case basis. But we're trying to make sure we have enough spaces to accommodate the different users who might be interested in the space up above. In addition to the dining areas, one of the things that you'll notice when you're out there and some of the conversations we've had with operators down on the International Boardwalk is there's a need for some outdoor storage up on the International Boardwalk to service these outdoor dining areas. And so we looked around to try to see if there were ways where we could consolidate that outdoor storage areas. And basically what you'll see on the next map is at the top of every stairwell, there's an area kind of right behind the planters as they wrap around where we think could be common areas to have 1 or 2 outdoor storage units that sit there that the businesses could be using. We'd like them to be uniform. We'd like this to be, kind of a clean look. Right now, you'll see in the next photos that I bring up, we have a broad range of stuff, and again, it was all meant to be temporary, so I'm not trying to be terribly critical, but as we move this to a more permanent fixture out there, we'd like to see the outdoor containers be a more uniform size. And we think something that's like a Foot Locker that's maybe 6 feet long, 3 feet deep, and 3 feet tall could fit in those spaces. It wouldn't impede the views or the accessibility of the areas up there and would provide a storage location for some of the supplies and equipment that the restaurateurs need to use up there. Obviously, these aren't designed for places where people could store tables and chairs and umbrellas. They're really more for, smaller equipment that they might need that they don't want to schlep up and down the staircase every time they open for business. We're looking at this being an annual permit. And again, like I said, we're not looking for this to start until the 2022 season. So we're letting the temporary use permits run their course for this summer. And then the idea is as we transition to a permanent program, as we move out of COVID, hopefully, and into a more permanent situation. We spent a lot of time talking about this internally, and I know there was some conversation at the Harbor Commission the last time we talked about fees for the space. And as we looked around, the thing that's most comparable within the city is the city has a sidewalk dining program in Riviera Village. And that sidewalk dining program has 2 different fees associated with it. One is a $6 fee if you're not serving alcohol, and one is a $12 fee if you are serving alcohol. And the difference is really intended to represent the fact that to serve alcohol in the village, the perimeter that needs to be fenced off needs to be more permanent, needs to have more work in there. And so the city has a higher fee associated with the alcohol service areas than they do with the non-alcohol service areas. When we looked at the International Boardwalk and the ability to use the public space, it's the same concept. It's public space that's currently, was being underutilized, admittedly, but we are allowing the privatization of public space on the upper portion of the International Boardwalk. And so some structure that has a permit fee associated with it, we think is appropriate for what ultimately will be an expansion of dining space. Like I said originally, the temporary use permits were intended to replace lost space in the restaurants due to dining restrictions associated with COVID. Once the indoor space is able to operate at full capacity, these outdoor dining spaces represent additional square footage for the operator to use. So we molded about a little bit and we said, we'd prefer not to have 2 different fee structures for alcohol serving areas and non-alcohol serving areas. And so we went with the lower fee, which is the $6 per square foot per year, with the logic being that these areas are ultimately also going to be, the sales are going to be reported as part of the business's sales program. And so the city, in almost every instance, does have a participating rent structure. So we would see some additional incremental revenue on top of the $6 per square foot fee that could account for the differential between those two pricing structures. So with that, we've put together an application that we'd like to see the businesses put their thoughts together. Again, we're trying to transition from a temporary program to something that's more permanent. We think this is something where, the city might have the responsibility to go up and create the actual boundaries themselves, create the corrals so that we get a uniform material, a uniform look. But we'd like the businesses to put in an application. On that application, you have it in your packet are things like the site plan and photos and drawings of furniture. One of the big things that we're concerned about is the quality of the furnishings that are going to be up on the International Boardwalk. If you sort of go up there today, you have a bit of a mishmash of stuff that's up there. And we think, there's a place for some eclectic kind of look, but yet we don't want folks going out and buying, a $3 plastic Walmart chair and using that as their dining chair. We think if this is going to be a more permanent component of the waterfront, that the furniture and the fixtures should have a quality to them that represents that permanency. So having some understanding of what the furniture is going to ultimately be that's up there, and again, it doesn't have to be really fancy. Some of the stuff that's up there right now are picnic tables that we think are great. They're a wonderful place to congregate and have a beer and have something to eat. I mean, that's a perfectly acceptable piece of furniture. We're just trying to maintain some level of quality and consistency. And then obviously, insurance is always a component of anything we do. We want to make sure that everybody's protected. So here's a map that lays out, as I said early on the previous slide, where we went out and Elizabeth wants me to make sure this is not perfectly to scale, but it's pretty darn close in terms of approximately what we think we can fit up on the International Boardwalk area. And so you see the areas labeled 1, 2 through 10 going from north to south, wrapping around the end of the pier where Naja's and Paddle House is located. And then one of the things that we had heard from some people, including our public works folks, was having these really long corridors of dining really impedes the public's ability to get up on that rail and be able to get out and look out over the views and kind of take in some of what that elevated platform is designed to afford you when you're down in the waterfront. So what you can see here is that, breaking these things into these 15 by 48 square feet or 15 by 48 foot pods gives us the opportunity to provide some fairly substantial spaces in between, anywhere from 23 feet on a couple of ends or 27 feet on the other end, down to about 17 feet as you're right in the middle of the boardwalk. And that's an opportunity for us to maybe place some benches, some furnishings in that zone where people can sit and enjoy looking out over the waterfront area. As I said earlier, if there's a desire to take two of these pods or come up with a bit of a different configuration, I think we can look at that on a case-by-case basis, but this is a concern that was expressed to us about maintaining some distance between these locations. Then the last thing I really want to show you on this particular slide is these little red kind of areas right here. So here's a stairwell on the north end. As you come to the top of the stairs, it wraps around. You can go either to your left or right. And there's an area right here where you can tuck in a couple of storage units right into these corners. And so we thought it would be a nice place to maybe take advantage of this space in here at the top of this stairwell, likewise at the top of this stairwell here. And then finally, there's a third stairwell down here, and have these storage units be in these areas right here. Again, uniform look, quality of material, so that we have a better experience for someone coming up there. Just to give you a little bit of a flavor, kind of what we end up with right now is you can see anything that from a kind of a Rubbermaid style storage container that looks like this. Some people are just kind of out of necessity wrapping things in tarp. This is a little more Foot Locker-ish. It's probably not as sturdy a bit of material as is necessary. Concerns are certainly, there are certainly concerns about vandalism and people getting access into these storage containers. We understand that. We'd like them to try to be as secure as possible. You have, just equipment you can see in this photo and kind of at the far end of this photo, some equipment that's just being stored loose out in the area. And that's partly because there is a storage unit for them to put it in, and I understand that. Here is the area where we're looking at these potential storage locations. So what you see in the area with the red circle is one of the stairwells that comes up from the International Boardwalk. And then here we are at the top of that staircase. And what we'd like to take advantage of is this wall that runs along the side of the staircase, and then have a secondary locker. It would be partially blocking the rail, but part of our concern about height is this rail is about 42 inches tall. And once you start adding height to that, you start to lose views fairly quickly, especially for someone who's standing a little bit further back, perhaps. So that's partly why we've looked at a storage container that looks something like 6 feet long. So it would run along the wall, be about 3 feet in depth as it sticks out from the wall, and then about 36 inches in height, which would give you right below the edge of that railing as an opportunity to use that for the storage equipment. So with all of that, what we'd like for you to do tonight is receive and file the administrative report on this report that we're giving you tonight on the outdoor dining permit program. And then the real goal of this agenda item is to continue to solicit your direction and recommendations and comments on the draft outdoor dining permit framework, with the idea of bringing you back, hopefully in its final format, very shortly, the completed packet that we would then advance to the city council. As I've told you previously, the city council has not, we have not had this conversation with them, and they haven't given us their blessing to make this a permanent program. Our goal was to try to get all of the input we could from you, the restaurateurs, the stakeholders, understand what the concerns are, the operational needs are, and then try to craft a program that meets those needs and take it to the city council for their consideration. So I am going to, we may want to go back to one of these photos, but for the moment, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I will tell you that concludes our presentation. We do have attendees who I know want to speak on this matter. And if they do, and they are able to raise their hands, that would be great. And then we also do have some e-comments on this particular topic. So we can read those into the record as well. So it's your pleasure, Chair Light, as to whether you'd like to hear from the public first and then have discussion, or have commission discussion and then hear from the public.
I'd like the commissioners to ask some questions first, and then we'll go to the public.
Great.
And I'll kick it off. Is there a reason you picked 10, or just that just seemed what fit?
It really was what fit. As we measured it out and laid it out, we had one good representative sample up there that's already in the 15 to 16 by 48 foot length. So we were able to see what one of these pods looked like, because there's one up there that's almost exactly this size. And so we used that as the template and just laid them out. And that just happens to be how many fits. It's more than we need based on the current demand through the temporary use permit program. So we don't currently have permittees. So it's a little more than we might need for that. And that's partly why we're amenable to, if someone wants to propose additional space, we could look at that on a case-by-case basis. We want to have everybody have the opportunity to compete for at least one of those spaces. And then from there, we could decide, where we go in terms of availability.
Okay, I think 10 is a good max then. But is there any reason you didn't include the pier in this?
So it's a good question. And I'll tell you, we were really focused on this area as a starting point. The pier is a bit of an interesting animal. When we did the temporary use permits at the pier, the only restaurateur that I can think of that was using the main space was El Torito. There were a lot of restaurateurs who wanted to use the spaces immediately adjacent to their restaurants, like Old Tony's is one that comes to mind. And I think we're going to need to, that's one of the refinements that we may need to make for the final version of this, is to meet with some of those restaurateurs and find out how many of them may be interested, because it's not, all the restaurateurs would probably argue this space isn't really proximate to their operations, and it creates some operational challenges from them having to go up and down stairs. You know, if you think about where El Torito's main dining room is, to go all the way down onto the plaza, service those tables and go back. Likewise, restaurants on the International Boardwalk have to climb up those stairs. We probably want to meet with them individually to see if there's a real interest in that space, and then bring that back to you.
Okay, so that'd be a separate item.
Yeah, it would be a separate discussion item. We just sort of focused on this area as a starting point because we have so many of the temporary use permits are located in this area.
Yeah, I understand. And those leaseholds are very small. With the wind block, if someone wants to put up a wind block, I don't think I saw anything in here about, you know, putting up plexiglass or anything like that. Is that contemplated or verboten?
It's not. I mean, we haven't, and Elizabeth, you'll have to help me if we say anything in the design guidelines. I don't have them up in front of me right now. You know, we've had some conversation about should there be plexiglass. It's an open rail. So, you know, part of the value of that is you could actually do some plexiglass down below, which would help with some of the wind coming through the railing. The question is, and it's really, you know, we don't have a strong preference one way or the other, but I think the question would be how far up, if you want to bring it off the rail or off the top of that rail, to have it provide an additional wind block as an elevated component. I don't recall in our guidelines, Elizabeth, whether that's expressly prohibited or not.
It's not prohibited.
Yeah. So we thought that might be a discussion item, and we do have one. I think we have one tenant that's already done that and put some up to kind of get a little bit of a wind protection.
Yeah, I just think if we do it, it should be consistent across. And I do think, you know, it would extend the number of people who would want to use it because you'd be effectively making it warmer. I mean, every day after, you know, as you get past 10 a.m., the wind starts coming up, and it would allow it to be more usable longer. What about heaters?
So heaters are not prohibited, if I'm remembering right. And I think, you know, you do see some of those already up there that are in use. What we would not like to see is, you know, you've seen some of these units where people have kind of a portable fire pit. We would not want to do something like that. That's kind of creates some different sort of challenges for us. But the stand heaters where you've got the dome and the heat radiating down would certainly be an acceptable use up there.
Okay, but just like the umbrellas, if they're not weighted down, they can blow over.
They can. I mean, that is the constant challenge up there, is, you know, how you treat things and how you deal with the wind as it kicks up.
Yeah. The external barricade, the perimeter barricade, if I'm reading this right, I think is the city responsible for that?
Well, that's our proposal, Chair, is, you know, most of the folks are using a barricade similar to what you saw in the picture, where they're using kind of a cinder block post holder, and then they're running, you know, boards between the posts, and those posts are generally at 8-foot intervals. It's not a perfectly consistent look right now. It's not permanent in the sense that it's not, some of them may be anchored down if some of the tenants decided to anchor them down. Some of them may not be fully anchored down. Our thought is that would be a contribution that our office, the public works folks, would be able to kind of put up the various perimeter, and we'd have to talk about what that ultimately would look like, but that we would be responsible for placing that perimeter material out there, and then allow the businesses to have the interior space for their tables, chairs, umbrellas, heaters, etc. We're trying to.
I think one of the things on Catalina and Riviera Village is, you know, the constant common look is a lot more appealing than a hodgepodge of different solutions. And I think right now, at least when I was down there last, which was not this past weekend, but 2 weekends ago, some of those boards had fallen off because they're not mounted that well and look kind of cheap and temporary, which it is. So I think we need to be more permanent. I don't know. I'd rather see the, if you're going to put up, it's pretty cheap lease that you're proposing. I'd prefer they pay for the barricade. City may install it. It may be to their specs, but it shouldn't be a burden on the public in the harbor for that. That's my personal feeling, but I'm open to others' comments. One of my concerns on railing access, I noticed some put like almost like a bar right on the railing.
Right.
Right, where you stand with your drinks, and a little concerned with drinks either intentionally or accidentally being dumped on people going in and out of businesses below or out of the restrooms below.
Yeah, I think we have language, and again, Elizabeth, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, where we talk about not affixing things to that railing.
That is correct. Yeah.
I know it's an attractive use for especially some of the businesses that are more, drink focused, to have standing space where it functions like a little small bar there. But it does create some maintenance issues for us. It does create the challenge you just identified, where things could topple over from there down onto the International Boardwalk. And again, we're not getting that consistent kind of look in terms of everybody's approaching that just a little bit differently in terms of how they're doing it.
Yeah, and I was concerned when I walked down there about railing access. You've addressed some of that, but if you look at it, if you go up into Zoologer Park, there's still one more layer up where people can line, that perimeter or whatever, the railing up there to look over the harbor.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Kind of a mitigating circumstance there.
Yeah, and we sort of noticed it if you were, if you can recall the length and duration of the nausea space, it runs well over 100 feet in length. And as you're walking along, there's just no break to it. And we thought, and we got some feedback from Public Works and other folks, that it would be good to have some breaks in between those corrals, so you don't just get that long extended feeling of being so far removed from that railing. If it kind of undulated in and out a little bit, you'd at least give folks some opportunities to get up to that rail. But your point's a fair one. There's another space up above. I don't recall if it doesn't run the whole length of the International Boardwalk.
No, it doesn't.
So, you have the plaza area up there and the park area up there, but then it terminates.
Yep. My last thing is sound. I don't think I read anything on sound. Some restaurants might want to put sound up there. I think if you allow it, it ought to be facing towards the water. But my concern is battle of, the different spaces trying to out volume each other. So I think we ought to consider expressly addressing it.
There was a section on noise nuisance and that they were not permitted to cause a nuisance. And that could be people reporting on them.
Yeah, that's kind of a passive way to let them do something and tell them it's a nuisance.
Yeah, I mean, look, if there would be, you could certainly recommend, if it's the will of the commission, that you don't have live, or you could have live music, not amplified music. I mean, that's one way to do it, kind of a more softer acoustic.
Well, I'm even just talking, speakers playing music.
Right.
You ride by past Shade, you get their music while you're going through their parking lot area, and then it goes away. And I think that works because there's nobody across the street.
Right.
Power plant.
Right. No, it's a great point, and I'd look to the commission for your thoughts on it. I certainly see the value of maybe prohibiting that, just so you don't end up with volume knob wars.
Okay, Roger, I think you were the first hand up.
Thanks. Yeah. Just to comment on the last point, it does specifically say no excessive noise, no recorded music, no live music, and no loudspeakers. At no time will excessive noise generated by patrons or recorded music originating from any part create a nuisance.
Yeah,
It specifically says no live music is permitted, and then further up, prohibited items, speakers. So loudspeakers.
That's where I missed it.
I don't know. Acoustic music seems good to me. Just to comment on the noise ordinance. It's a tough area for noise. There's a lot of condominiums close to that area. So my first question, any input yet from the peer association, or are we about to get that in public comment?
I think you're about to get that in public comment. Our take on this was to kind of give something for people to start shooting at, so that then we could get some feedback on I can tell you the peer association and, in particular, Bob Resnick has been very supportive of the outdoor dining concept. So, and our offices as well. I mean, I think we're supportive of creating this permanent outdoor space. So I don't think there's any opposition to that. I think some of the comments you may hear tonight are probably more operationally oriented, like how this might work better, or could it be modified to improve operations for various businesses, and we'd love to hear that input and see if and how we can incorporate that.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'd also like to put in a vote for having a certain amount of look and feel being all alike. I've said many times how much I like the look and feel of the village, and I wish that the look and feel of this were more similar. Maybe just barricades and lighting, the same kind of pole lighting that we have in the village. Just something to kind of put the right border on this. I don't know how we do it. I would be happy to have the peer association or the restaurants and bars along the strip, make a proposal. And funding will be an issue for it. Everybody's broke and you can't get materials at all. So, you said in one section of this, it says no, umbrellas with writing on them. I don't know. There are other parts of the city that have, umbrellas that say Budweiser on them. And if your only source of umbrellas and funding is, Budweiser, that might be something we review on a case by case basis. So, just to comment on funding sources and maybe sponsored umbrellas and stuff and tables and so forth. It may be that, beer companies are the only source of funding for something that all looks and feels the same down there. I've said in the past, you talked about the width of the walking area and potentially sliding into 15 feet instead of 16 feet. There's a lot of areas along the path there where really only, two people can walk side by side. And if you get stuck behind, a slower person or somebody walking a bike or a stroller or whatever, you're stuck behind them for a long way. So I can see why you'd want to make that pathway a little bit wider, but I've said this in the past, one of the biggest problems is the city trash cans along there. They're big and they tend to turn into bike parking in between them. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know where to put, you got to have trash cans. I don't know where to put them. So, they're taking up valuable space and really impeding traffic flow.
Yeah. And I hear you, Commissioner Carlson. And I do think one of the things that we are going to have to look at if we move forward with implementation on this is we're going to have to completely look at all the various components of the city furniture that's up there. When we lay this out, we're inevitably, we can't lay it out perfectly so that, an existing bench didn't fall inside, one of these corrals. And so we're going to have to go up and make some, different choices in terms of use of space. One of the advantages of having the breaks and kind of that little dive in between the two is it may give us a place to move some of those furnishings so they're still occurring in a regular pattern. So you're not, having to walk miles to get to a but they occur in a regular pattern, but we can maybe get them out of that walkway area and into those little 17 and 23 foot breaks in the space.
Yeah, unfortunately, those little breaks may turn into bike parking. And this is really getting out of the scope for us, but I wish that this pier area connected to the bike paths in the rest of Redondo. I wish there was a way you could ride a bike on a good path from North Redondo to the pier. That's just, advice for the council and a bigger problem for another day.
Right.
A better shape for the dining areas may be longer and narrower. If for example, at Naja's, you have a 48 by 15 and they want a couple, you've got to jump across that 23-foot open space with your beer. If instead you went, 8 feet wide or 10 feet wide, the full 100 feet, now you've got a single place to walk around with your beer. Now you've got a wider walkway. That walkway has better views because you're only looking across one table. Every table's right up against the railing. Every table has a good view. So, especially if you don't necessarily need 10 spaces, a different geometry for that space may work out better. Just a thought. I'm curious what the cost per square foot, you said $6 per square foot per year, and that compares to food only in the village. How does that compare to the cost per square foot for rent of the normal space in this area?
Yeah, I think we did the math, and this is 50 cents a square foot. 50 cents a square foot. And what we would normally lease a space for right now is most of our leases are running about $2.25 a square foot for indoor space. So it's definitely at a discount. It kind of recognizes the fact that you're not going to be able to use it every day. You may not be able to use it for different parts of the year. So it's not priced to be comparable to the indoor space, but it is priced to recognize that, we are giving up some public space to private use.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that. I'm troubled that it's the same price as the price in the village because it seems significantly less valuable to me than the space in the village. Since I got the vaccine, I've been eating out almost once a week somewhere in Redondo, and I've been down to this part of Redondo a couple times a month. I really enjoy it. And I've seen it be very different compared to the village. The village spaces are occupied all night, every night. It can be tough to get a table. If you go down to the pier, if there's a cloud, these things are empty. Even in the summertime, even on a hot day, boy, the minute the sun is down or that cloud comes in, the fog comes in, it's cold there and it's empty. So I see this as a lot less valuable than the space down in the village. And I also see this as having more storage issues. At night in the village, if you have something valuable, you can bring it inside. If you need to set something up, in the daytime, you roll it right out. Well, now you've got to, hike stuff up and down stairs, and people may show up, they may not. You may have a big party show up and suddenly need this space and need to, deploy drinks and a server and stuff up there. And if it's packed away or hard to get to, or, is not all these things are near the stairs. If it's a couple 100 feet away from the stairs and it's hard to get to, you're going to keep it closed unless it's a really nice day. So, I think in many cases, some of these might only get used for a few hours on a weekend day and only in the summertime. So I'm a little troubled by, the price being the same as the price in the village, which gets used almost every night. And I'm also trying to solve storage problems where, it's tough to get a lot of stuff up the stairs. The elevator's not that convenient. The elevator's all the way down at the end of one things. If you need to deploy, service, kegs, whatever, drinks, to make use of this space, it's a long time to set that up. You really want to store stuff up there. And, if these 3 foot by 6 foot benches are adequate, great. I would kind of look to, the restaurants and the bars there and the Pier Association for their advice on what works and how often they really are using these things. Do they need electricity? Do they need water? How do they send an order downstairs? There's a lot of logistical troubles to this. Or is it just people walking up a flight of stairs with a beer, which honestly is what I've been doing. And, somebody, the ABC or Redondo PD, is probably going to put the cuffs on me for walking around in open space with a beer, but hey, so far so good. So, hey, I appreciate this is a starting point and something to throw darts at. I'm really curious to see what the people running this and living with it, have to say, and if they can work together and come up with, something that works for them, present an alternative. So thanks. Yeah, thanks very much for making something to throw darts at, because that's always the hardest part. It's easy to throw darts.
Yeah, and that's what we wanted to do. We've been talking a lot, and we thought we better get something on paper, and let's start to make whatever edits and changes and things we need to do. You do raise a good point, which I probably should have raised during the presentation regarding the ABC and the alcohol activities at the pier. The police department is, and they're kind of taking a renewed interest in this as of late. They are trying to curb the wandering beer phenomenon that happens at the pier. For a while, we did ask some of the restaurateurs to, if they were going to pour a beer into a cup, that the cup have the name of the restaurant on it, so it would help us start to figure out where it came from.
Like Tony's?
Yeah, or Charlie's or Portside Cafe, or some of the places there where they get a beer and it just kind of wanders. It's a bit of a challenge for us. In addition, we aren't really sure what the ABC landscape is going to be. I don't know if any of the restaurateurs who may be on are going to comment about it. They've provided a fair amount of flexibility during COVID. Will that flexibility remain in place? And if not, what types of licensing requirements will be required in order to have these areas be alcohol-friendly areas? So, not knowing that, the permit just, talks about making sure that the permittee complies with all of the relevant ABC requirements. That's all we can really ask. And then we can try to do our best and work with folks to keep the wandering beer from going too far from where it was intended to be consumed.
Thanks. That's it.
Hey, thanks, Roger. Vicky?
Chair Light and Commissioner Carlson covered most of my concerns. First of all, thank you, staff, because it's very thorough. It looks like a lot of work went into this, so thank you for that. The unified look I'm very much in favor of. And my question is, can the restaurants or the vendors do seasonal rentals instead of renting it year round?
We could talk about that. We sort of structured it as an annual permit so that they would, have the ability to use the space on an as-needed basis. If there's a thought that, you want to do something that's April to October kind of thing, or, May to October kind of thing, I certainly think we could chat about it. It may solve some of the issues that Commissioner Carlson has raised in terms of the pricing, to be able to have it not necessarily have to be a full 12-month annual permit. So that could be a possibility. Again, I'll look to you all for your thoughts as to whether that's something you'd like us to consider.
Because March is very windy, and we all know that February usually is windy, cold, and rainy. Yep. So, now we've knocked 2 months down. April, it starts to get nice again. But, maybe a seasonal approach. Some of them may want year round, but it might be nice to offer a seasonal. And what happens if we have some of those corrals that are unused? They just stand vacant. Will we take them down or just leave them?
Probably depends on the construction, and how we do it. If it's something that, if we just simply aren't getting the usage at all, we put the permit program out there, and then we have 10 opportunity sites and only half of them get taken. We might want to gauge that level of interest before we go out and make those permanent installations. In other words, meet with the different restaurants who currently have a temporary use permit, see who's interested in a space up there, and maybe we start to build it out as the permits, are applied for and taken, rather than build out 10 spaces and then have some be left vacant. We could certainly, kind of construct them as they come in and apply for the permit. I think that might be a way to manage the issue.
Okay. Well, that's all I have. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vicky. Matt?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I'm not sure about here comes my grandchildren. I told them they could come say goodnight to me. I'm not sure what's going on here. Delaying game, sorry. Come here, can you kiss? Say hi. There you go. Okay.
Hi.
Okay, sorry for the interrupt. Time for you to go. Daddy, off she goes. Anyway, I'm really...
Maybe
Sorry
the
about
best
that.
part of the meeting.
I'm really in
Commissioner.
favor. I was hoping to squeeze that in. Vicky, you should have gone a little longer.
Bad timing.
Anyway, peace. I'm really in favor of a consistent look. In fact, I was just said, what did we say? $6 a year generates about $40,000 a year in revenue for the city, or for the Tidelands, I presume.
Uplands.
Make it $10 and let the city provide the tables and chairs and whatnot. Have it a consistent look and charge them a few more bucks. My concern is that we need to control the look and what it looks like. Commissioner Carlson kind of really alluded to it. I'm just afraid that whatever you approve in an initial permit, 6 months later, a year later, it's looking raggy, it's not being cared for, whatever, and it just will be a negative for the harbor and pier area. I think we can make this a real positive, but I think we need to be able to control the look. Along that same lines, I wouldn't use plexiglass. Why? Because it's so prone to being scratched and being fogged up, blocking views. I'd use glass. I do like the idea of a windbreak there. The other part of that is concern for things being dropped over the railing. The other thing about the furniture, those umbrellas and other things, chairs, good breezes, I've seen those things take off. It becomes Mary Poppins up in the air. With the city controlling what's being put there, kind of limits or reduces, I would hope, the likelihood or possibility of all that happening. So yeah, hope we move forward with it. I'd make it a year round or nothing. Otherwise, you're just going to get people signing up, especially if you did a month by month, just signing up for the best months. They either sign up for the whole year or not. At $10 a square foot a year, it's either something they can utilize and make money off of or not. And a few extra bucks at that point, I don't think changes the dynamics, the profitability dynamics too much. Take it out of their hands and supply everything. Anyway, those are my 2 cents. And yeah, I hope we look for doing similar things other places in the harbor where it makes sense. That's it. Chair, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Leslie?
Yeah, thanks again, staff, for this draft. I had a question that the barrier, you say the barrier the city will provide, just clarification, you're thinking the concrete barrier and what's there right now, the concrete barrier and the wood railing would all be city provided?
If it's ultimately a wood barrier, I think we would have to settle on a look, and that's probably,
yeah, I mean, that's
to come back to you and have some conversations about some ideas of what that uniform look should be. Most of the people that are up there now are using those concrete post blocks. They're sticking the posts in,
yeah,
and then they're running the boards. That may or may not be the right look, but they've all generally adopted that. So to the extent there is some loose uniformity, it's because they've all kind of adopted that same technique and approach for now.
Yeah, I was just checking on your definition of barrier. Yeah, I echo what everyone here is saying about, I think uniformity, the look is very, very important. If you think about other like fixtures, like lamp posts and things like this, I think that falls into that same category of it looking nice in this area. And a couple of people said about, the tenant paying for that, or at least in part paying for that. I think that is important. There, I don't think there's like a one-time fee. And so that would be another way you could do it, is a one-time fee to help pay for those structures. I would disagree. Roger, you were saying that the price should be less than in the village. I think it's a little bit of apples and oranges because of the current state of the harbor, and, you know, going through a refresh is very different than where the Riviera is right now. And so ultimately where we will end up should be an apples to apples, and the value of the use of that public space is still very high. And so I think looking at similar prices makes sense even for now. I didn't see in the language that you restricted it to businesses that only had brick and mortar leases below, but maybe I missed it.
I do think there's some language. I think I even remember writing it. This may be one of my edits where I said you had to be a lessee in good standing with the city.
Okay.
To apply for the permit. So yes, and if your question is, could, you know, like an outside entity that doesn't have a current lease with the city take over one of these outdoor spaces? That's not the intent. The intent is really for the lessees to have the opportunity to expand their operation into some outdoor space.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think you need to specify that the 6 foot is length and not height for the storage units. On the width, I do like the idea of narrowing it and pulling the trash cans maybe to the open spaces when you do so. I noticed, yeah, when you come to a spot where the trash can is, thinking of like kind of more of a worst case, like a double stroller going one way and a wheelchair going the other, like you want those people to pass. I wondered about rules on storage after hours or off season when maybe they're not planning to use the upper deck. Again, speaking to the look of things, you know, right now when we don't really have rules, it's very much hodgepodge of chairs stacked in a corner or laid against a chair, laid against the table, kind of all over, umbrellas and heaters up or down. Probably need some sort of guidelines about that sort of thing. And somebody mentioned a keg. I'm thinking we don't want kegs stored up there unless it's inside their locker. I don't know. We don't really specify anything like that right now, I don't think.
We don't. I will tell you there are a couple of businesses up there that have, you know, kind of the portable tap. So it's about, the keg sits in the box and it's, you know, refrigerated, and it's a portable tap, and they can just tap it and pour off of that space. So, but you know, just basic keg storage, no. But something like that, where maybe there's a portable tap that can be rolled into a corner of the dining area when it's not in use. You know, I don't fundamentally think we'd be opposed to that, since that's kind of part of their operation. I don't really think of that as storage necessarily. Yeah,
I think just something in keeping with the, you know, the look of things that might fall into that category of how all that comes together. A couple things on your spots. Spot number 1, that's over the paddle house. And right now that has a bunch of bike storage rack.
Yeah, if you would give me 1 second, I want to, just because there may be members of the public that don't have this, I'd like to share my screen again, just so we can make sure everybody's seeing that diagram.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, so I'll be challenged for a second time to show it to you. There we go. All right, so let me go up a slide. I can figure out how to do that. Here we go. Okay, that's what you're looking for?
Yeah, so in spot number 1, on the bottom of that is lined with bike racks right now.
there is an area right there where you do have some bike storage racks that are there. We did notice that, and we thought there may be enough space to there's also a light pole in the middle of that as well. So
Yeah.
It might require, and again, these things might need a little tweaking here and there, but yes, there is some bike storage on this upper plaza right here where there's some racks.
So I was just noticing that, and then also maybe considering not using spot 1 as more of a viewing area for the public and not allocating that for the dining.
No, it's a good comment. While we were out there, we went back and forth a little bit on whether that's a spot we should consider. We thought we'd show it, but I can understand the argument of perhaps not having that be in a designated outdoor space and just leaving it along the perimeter, spaces 2 through 10.
Right. And hopefully this will be tied to something in the amenities plan, right? Because it is connected to a kind of a larger plaza area off to the side there. So it was just considering maybe keeping that all as a plaza. And the other one, I don't remember which location. It was either by 4 or 7, but I noticed there was a water fountain. So I don't know if that's something we intend to keep in another location or what.
We'll take a look at that. I'm not remembering it off the top of my head, the exact location.
And those were my comments. Thanks.
Okay. I'll take this down. Okay.
That's all.
Chair, you're muted.
Sorry. Thanks, Steve. Leslie. Steve, you were up next.
Yeah, I think I was. Thank you to the staff for putting together this presentation and the document here for us to review. I think this is great. Just a couple of comments. Number one, I agree with a lot of the other commissioners about uniformity of look and feel. I do think this that we can control that. I think it'll make that space up there much more usable and friendly, and people want to go there. I am a little concerned that over time it might get a little degraded if we don't control how it looks up there. But a couple of thoughts staff may want to consider. You might consider, Stephen, identifying sets of furniture that are acceptable. Maybe work with the peer association and have the tenants or the restaurateurs decide which ones are good for them, as long as they comply with the little standards, and let them pay for it. Some restaurants may want 2 tops, 4 tops, bench tops, whatever. And as long as it conforms to what we think is acceptable, let the restaurateurs invest in that, in that space. That could be one way to approach it. The other thing, I know it has not been brought up by the other commissioners, but I'm going to bring it up. I kind of don't like the idea of the storage outside their space. These are fairly sizable spaces, it looks like to me. 48 by 16, you say. And these lockers you're talking about are fairly small. I'd almost prefer that the restaurateurs manage their own storage lockers, however they want to do it. If they want to have small lockers inside their space, maybe we should have some guidelines around that. What those look like or what the spaces are. Or if they need bigger spaces, to store mini kegs or whatever they want to do, they can propose something that's inside there, and you have some limits on it, But I'd almost prefer that. It kind of puts it back on the responsibility of the restaurateurs to manage it inside their space. And also clears up potential clutter in these areas. And I'm a little concerned about that. There could be traffic, people wanting to enjoy the view, and then staff in the restaurants coming in to get stuff in those areas. You had mentioned already that it could be, I think Roger brought up a good potential concern that people could be parking bikes in certain areas. It's going to be interfering with those lockers. Members of the public aren't going to know what those lockers are for, and so, they're going to want to see the view. They're going to park their bike. They want to do a variety of things. So I would almost be in favor of moving those storage lockers inside their space. If that means increasing the width another 3 feet or whatever to accommodate in some of these areas, I'm noticing some of these spaces here are fairly large. I mean, you've got between 2 and 3, 23 feet in between. You've got 27 feet in between 7 and 8. And maybe a couple of those could be a little larger if a tenant wants a larger space or whatnot. But that would be something I would advocate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Tom?
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you, staff, for this excellent straw man that we have. It's wonderful. Just a couple quick comments. One, I like Matt's comments on the city, the city maintains the barriers just to make sure the conformity is there. And maybe if we can, as far as how much that costs, we get estimates from the Public Works and just work that into the price. Ultimately, I think this should be done, demand pricing in a sense. I mean, when you're going to have to set a price at something, and then if people really, really want it, then we've kind of hit it well. And if we haven't, we're going to have to lower the price. A couple concerns, though, is the bicycles. I think a couple commissioners mentioned bicycles being parked and causing havoc. I think somehow organizing bikes better, right? Having bike parking somewhere and some signage indicating please park your bikes in a correct location. And the last thing I was kind of thinking about is security up there. If the city does maintain the barriers, maybe we could think about installing some cameras with some monitoring going on at the police station up there or something to make sure that nobody messes with stuff that is stored there. And as we go, I'm definitely want to hear what the public has to say about this. But as we, respond to things that we need to change and make it better, kind of continue to tweak it. But I love the proposal as it is. Yeah, as a first step. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Leslie and Steve, you still have your hands up. I'm assuming that was you just didn't take them down.
Actually, I have one more comment.
Okay, go ahead, Leslie.
Steve, that was a good catch on the storage. I didn't notice that it's outside the yellow boxes, and I agree with his comment that should be cordoned off within the barriers for storage. That's all.
Okay, I think that we got all the commissioners. So, Stephen, let's open it up to public comments.
Sure. Right now we have 2 members of the public that have raised their hands that are attendees. If there's anyone else that's here to speak on this matter and wants to raise their hand, that would be great. We can recognize you. My ability to, and this may be a function of me working on a Chromebook as opposed to a Windows system, but my ability to hear from the members of the public is I have to promote them to be a panelist. So what I'm going to do is, Rochelle, I'm going to promote you to be a panelist, and then you'll be able to speak to the Harbor Commission. Please introduce yourself. And you should be a panelist at this point. Yes, we see your name there. So if you unmute yourself, you should be ready to go.
Okay, hi, am I here?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm one of the operators of the Slip Bar and Eatery. We're so thankful that we were able to start indoor dining when outdoor dining when COVID wouldn't let us be indoor, and that they're allowing us to do that for the rest of the year. I'm very excited about this proposal. We've had hundreds of people ask us if we're going to continue outside seating after COVID. So this is great, but I do have my darts because after operating this for over a year through trial and error, we have a lot of suggestions. I think a lot of what I have to say, I don't know if I can get it in 3 minutes, but a lot of it was covered by Commissioner Carlson, and a lot of it would be covered by just having the city take care of most of the infrastructure, because I think a lot of the requirements are a bit vague as to how one would comply with them. But we could get into that more specifically if we continue talking offline. I don't know if I have to say everything here. We really appreciate that you're allowing us to participate in this. One problem though with my darts is that the setup and expense is very expensive. for perspective, we spent close to like $10,000 to get it to where it is now. And we have plastic chairs, but they've lasted a year, but they're plastic, but I think they look good. So, again, if the city could just take care of everything, we could not have to deal with all these questions as they come up. On top of the setup costs, the $4,000 to get the space, I do think is excessive. As Commissioner Carlson pointed out, we can only use the space for a couple of months a year and really only on the weekends. So it is really increased. And by the way, we all pay rent directly to the city, which I don't think that the people in the village do. They pay it to a private company. So when our rent goes up and our sales go up, your sales go up and your rent goes up. So it's sort of a win-win in that case. A huge problem that we have is it doesn't say anything about having any sort of serving desk there. Now, it just appears like it's just seating. And I love getting my steps going up and down those stairs every day, all weekend, but it's kind of crazy. So we currently have our little cooler up there that we use, but this proposal looks like that wouldn't be allowed, and that would be problematic. And then as far as the storage, it's really small. Like, we've been trying to work with you, Stephen, to show you that like that cooler is a little bit taller than that. So if the city was to just take care of all the materials and give us somewhere to put everything, it would be a lot easier because we wouldn't have to spend an hour like taking things up and down, and maybe we wouldn't have to store as much stuff. But right now, the 3 foot by 3 foot by 6 foot is a little bit small for all the things that we're working with. But if we can have more of a dialogue, we can talk about it later. And one of the last issues is security. We are vandalized every single weekend, and I'm not even exaggerating. So I think that you guys really need to have a more dedicated security presence up there in the times it's not used. This proposal doesn't say any specific hours. So I would also suggest that up front, you state the restrictions on the hours so that people know like what they're getting into, and that's kind of it. So we're really excited. We would love to talk with you more. We'd love to invite you down to come and view the operations maybe one time, like view us setting up, view us taking down and see what's involved. And I think that would really help inform the permit process. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. A question for you. You talked about have you guys gotten together as business owners down there and come to a consensus?
Yeah, I mean, the Slip Bar, we talk with Naja's and King Harbor and Baja Chef and what's that? And Quality Seafood and the owners of the Fish and Friends. We were talking with them before. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm voicing a lot of the concerns that a lot of people have. But when I was saying we, I meant mostly like we, the Slip Bar.
Okay. Would it be possible for, you guys to get together, take this straw man and come back to the commission and the city with how you'd change it?
Definitely. We would love it. Yes.
And Director Pratt, could we do a workshop on this or just ask them to submit comment or?
Yeah, absolutely. We, like I said, we sort of drafted this and sent it out and then sent a note. Bad timing. We sent a note to the businesses on Wednesday, and which, as you know, was Thursday, which, as you know, was crazy for other reasons, to see if they wanted to participate. But yeah, we absolutely could do that. That's an opportunity that we haven't had as much opportunity to communicate with the businesses just due to some of our meeting requirements. But we could definitely do something in terms of a workshop to kind of solicit some input in a more public setting.
Or alternatively, we could form a subcommittee and meet with them and come back with recommendations. But
that would work as well.
What's your preference?
It's I don't have a strong preference. It might be nice for you all as the ultimate decision makers to hear from them if there's a group of you that'd like to sit on a small subcommittee and meet with some of the restaurant operators outside of the Harbor Commission format. Could one of your staff attend that meeting? Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We probably all, in fact, Jim, you'd probably get all three of us there at that meeting.
Okay. So thanks, Rachel. Anybody else have questions for Rachel?
Yep.
Okay, Matt, and then I see Vicky.
Rochelle, just a quick question. You mentioned you get vandalism. Could you describe typically what they're vandalizing?
Yes. So we have had our little cooler broken into. We've had our little wood railings broken many, many times. I've had lots of plants stolen. They usually sit at the little bench and knock everything over and leave a bunch of trash. They've graffitied. What am I missing? They've broken lights, stolen things. What else? I mean, anything you can think of that someone can do.
Just upend tables.
Upend tables for no reason. It's just frustrating.
We heard the mystery voice from the back.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that. And I guess that kind of goes to the idea of having a consistent look and having the city purchase and maintain everything, because we can probably, we have a longer view of it and invest a little money up front and make it a little bit more vandal proof, so to speak. We've got the experience in the parks and everything else as to what works and what doesn't. Anyway, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Vicki?
Yes, Rachel, isn't the outdoor dining the same hours as your actual business?
In theory, well, yes and no. This TUP only allows us to go till 10, and sometimes we could go later in our business in theory. But the weather is what keeps us from operating much longer than that. And just the general atmosphere. I think if we could get this going and a lot of businesses participating, then it would be something where people go and it's a destination. But right now, once the sun goes down, everyone leaves from there. And as it was pointed out, if there's even a cloud in the sky, there's nobody there. And it's just very challenging to operate it all the time. I'd love to. I would love to be able to, but there's nobody really that seems interested. Not as many people seem interested in being there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see no other requests. So thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Director Proud, do we have another online comment?
We do. So let me just change. Okay, and now, Carlos, you're the next person that's going to be promoted to panelist to speak on this topic. So I'll let you know. You could unmute yourself. You should be appearing on everyone's screen here. Here we are, Carlos. So you're live. If you want to unmute yourself, you can address the Harbor Commission, Carlos.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can, thank you.
Well, hey, Stephen, I want to give you a shout out. Thank you for spearheading this. It's awesome. I'll try not to take too much time because you guys have all been very, very thorough. And thank you for your comments also, Michelle. I just want to my point is to let you guys all know that we've been operating down there since 2015. So a better part of 6 years. So we know what it takes to run that restaurant down there. Obviously with the pandemic, that gave us opportunity to kind of realize a dream or a goal or a dream that we've had since the beginning, and that's to utilize that, a vast area upstairs with ocean views with the patio. So it's been challenging, but it's also been awesome. You guys should all know that it is very rewarding. We would continue to do it just because it is very rewarding. And when you're there and you see the reason that we're there in business, and that's for the public, they really do appreciate that. So you guys, I think it's a good thing to really understand. I'll second Rachel's motion. I've worked in law enforcement before, and I have a lot of friends who are cops. I'm sure you guys all are in the same boat. If you ever had the opportunity to do a ride along with those guys, what an amazing eye opener. So absolutely, every one of you is invited if you want to come on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon when we're slammed, just to kind of figure out what this really is that we're doing. I think that would shed a lot of light onto this. I do want to say that we were the first restaurant to apply for the TUP. We, myself included, and Randy actually designed. So when you guys are talking about the design with the wood and It was all based on just what can we do to get it going as fast as possible and the cheapest route. And we still spent about $1,500 on materials. So we've put a lot of time, effort, energy, and money into this this venture that we've been doing upstairs. So we do appreciate you guys taking a look at it long term. Let's see, we're there every day operating a business. Obviously the patio's not open all the time, but we have been operating that patio for a better part of a year and a half during this COVID. So we do know what it takes. So I appreciate you guys on any level that you could include us on conversations on how to move forward. And I know you guys have brought up, I think it's a great idea to pick our brains because we're there every day doing it, fighting a good fight. So I think that we have a lot of great ideas. When I say a lot, we have a lot of great ideas. I mean, this is what we do. We're always talking about it, and we travel a lot around the world, and we look at places and how can we bring these fun environments that we see out there in the world, and how do we bring that to Redondo Beach? So, we're constantly taking photos and trading ideas. So yeah, please pick our brains.
Carlos, if I could interrupt, I missed
absolutely.
what business you're running.
The Slip Bar. I'm so sorry, you guys.
Oh, the Slip. Okay.
Yeah. The Slip Bar.
We love the Slip, by the way. So.
Yeah. Oh, thank you guys. Sorry about that. You guys hit on all the challenges. I mean, we could talk about challenges from, staffing, all the challenges that the pandemic has presented to us, the logistics you guys multiple times have mentioned running up and down the stairs. So storage is an issue. You guys already know this, so I don't need to belabor it. Somebody had mentioned the music. So we do have music. We do have a Bluetooth speaker up there. I don't see that as being an issue at all. Nobody's trying to, if anything's loud is that boat down there, the fishing or the harbor boat, whatever that is. Those guys are cranking some music. But I think that we're very respectful. I mean, we do this for the community. We're not trying to cause any problems or any issues. So I don't see music as being a problem. I personally, one of my things I do is I manage all the live entertainment at the Slip. So, anything from karaoke to live bands. I did bring a buddy of mine up there on I think it was a Saturday afternoon for a couple of hours and like 3 to 5. And it wasn't a problem at all. And people really do appreciate live acoustic music. It doesn't need to be crazy. We're not trying to rock out and, blast the neighbors above, out of their balconies or apartments or their beautiful pool area. Not that they could hear us with that plexiglass that they have there. But yeah, I think we're very respectful in how we try to operate. So, but again, I agree with all of you guys with uniformity. And if there's 10 places up there, I think everybody should have to create their vibe. And music is a big part of that. So as long as it's not played too obnoxiously loud, I think that it's not an issue. In regards to the umbrellas, again, we, in the beginning, we got all the free umbrellas from Budweiser and whatnot, and we didn't like the way it looked. So we went out and spent our own money, and we realized one crucial thing, another challenge, and that's the supply chain. We couldn't find enough umbrellas out there. Home Depot, Lowe's, online, everything was out. So what we had to do is, we piecemealed it. The picture that Stephen had up there, was a very early photo. It's no longer like that. We have all red and blue, but it took us a while to get there. And because we do care about the appearance and we do care about how it looks. So the last thing that we want is to post something out there that doesn't seem professional or I guess the good word is janky. We're definitely very conscious of what we look like and how we behave. So somebody mentioned heaters. That's the other thing. We pay a company to come and they bring us propane and we paid for the heaters, or $250 each. The wind blows them down, they get damaged, they're corroded. I got 2 heaters out of 4 right now that I can't use because the air just corrodes it and you can't turn the knob anymore. So, it's a real issue. It's a real thing. We do have one table fire pit out there that's propane, and that's never been an issue. It's protected. The knobs aren't, it's covered because there's a little door, and they look cool, and it serves as a table too. So it's something I think that's worth a conversation. The big tall heaters are really a pain in the butt, and that's not a joke. Let's see. I guess
And
I'll
I
just
assume there's no good way to run permanent lines up there, right?
say again.
No good way to run permanent lines.
No. Hey, listen, we talk about that too. I mean, I wish we could, run permanent gas, electricity. That would be great. I just really want to say to you guys that, we really appreciate this. We really want to be part of it. This is really, really exciting. We have a lot of really fun ideas. I think that you guys are doing, it's the right direction to go by including us. And yes, we will. We're actually actively working with the other businesses to, have a little single voice for you guys. So Rachel's spearheading that, and I'm sure you're going to hear more of that. And please keep us in the loop in the discussions and the conversations. I do want to point out two final things. One is the $4,320 annual permit. To me, seems high when we're paying a percentage rent. And just in all transparency, the rent checks we've been writing the last few months are well over $10,000 a month. And I mean, that's a lot of money. So just that should be considered in the conversation. And finally, I'll end with security. It's a real issue. Rachel is not joking. Please, again, I invite each and every one of you to schedule time, come down and just check it out. I mean, we're constantly cleaning graffiti. They try to, I have cameras up there too, by the way, and we can have that discussion too. So we've seen people kicking, these are just people, whether they're homeless people or kids in the middle of the night running around kicking down our walls. It's like ridiculous. So again, we did this on a whim, a very temporary type of situation. So obviously we didn't bolt anything in the ground, so obviously when you guys do this on a permanent basis, that's going to be something to take into consideration. And I would highly recommend that whatever you guys do should be like permanent structures. And if you look around, again, like I said, we travel. We can send you guys photos, we can idea share with you guys, and that's the main thing, because there are some really cool places out there in the world that really utilize this type of space with this kind of view. So that's all I have for you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. If you'd stay on, I think I see a hand up from Commissioner Bauer.
Yes, thank you, Chair Light. Yeah, Carlos, I love that feedback, and I love that we're getting a conversation going. By the way, if we do form a subpanel, I'd love to be on it. Just curious, is your take on the current configuration as it's presented, the 16-foot wide? Would you think it should be changed at all or shrunk, or what is your thoughts on what's kind of presented there?
Well, what I will say is I think we're 60 right now. And I think that's probably a little more than we need. So I think that we can continue to have these discussions with Stephen on what's the exact, I kind of like what he did there with the breaks in between and stuff. And I know Naja's took over a lot of good space out there. But one thing I will say, I don't see a lot of people standing at the rail and taking in the view. Pre-COVID, when there was nothing but empty space up there. Right now, it's just as much as I know everybody wants it to be a thing, it's not reality. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. People do walk by, take a picture, whatever, but it's not the main focus of that area up there. It's not what people are actually doing. So, but I do think that having those breaks in between, in between the spaces, is a good idea. The other thing we mentioned was bikes, right? It gets pretty crazy up there. You guys are right about that. But there is some right above us, right in front of us, right at the base of the, what is that, little courtyard area at the base of the pool for the condos. There's more room for extra bike racks there too, just as an FYI.
That's great. Yeah, that's great input. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for that information, Carlos. I think this will be a great to move forward and hopefully make this thing great.
Agreed. Excited.
Okay, I think that's my last hand. Thanks, Tom. So Carlos, thank you for speaking to us, and I think we'll be getting back with y'all. Stephen, anybody else on the line?
I don't have anybody else who has their hand raised online. We do have some e-comments that there's 3 of them that we should read into the record for you.
Are they lengthy or are they?
They're not terribly
No,
lengthy.
they're brief.
They're fairly
Okay.
they're fairly simple. The first is from Philip Hendricks, and he writes, "A permit for business doing the proper thing to protect their customers? Question mark. I'm a Redondo Beach resident who has been to the pier every week for the last 10 years. We would all agree that much could be done to improve the pier. However, this is a huge misstep. Charging businesses for outdoor space when COVID cases are rising again, and a number of businesses are experiencing current outbreaks, seems to not have a grasp on public health safety. These aren't parking spaces where the city is losing revenue. This was dead space, and the businesses that expanded up there brought life to a floundering pier. The outdoor dining above and along the boardwalk brought life to the pier while providing safety to me and our visitors. Please work to assist businesses survive and support a safe Redondo Beach pier for visitors." Second comment is from Ashley Todd. "I have been a Redondo Beach resident for the last 8 years and have always supported the wonderful local businesses and teams. These teams need us now more than ever with the long-lasting economic effects of the pandemic and the morale of their teams. These businesses have been very flexible and forgiving with the ever-changing mandates and restrictions and have been able to fight to keep their businesses and livelihoods operating despite multiple challenges. Let's keep the outdoor dining and drinking going. It's been a huge asset to the local community, and these businesses need it to survive." And the last comment on this topic on the e-comment is from Beth Brenton. "We support local restaurants and their ability to have patio dining. They are trying to meet the needs of their customers who are returning after a year of the uncertainty of the pandemic. We do not feel that the Harbor Commission should charge an exorbitant amount for the patio permit. Let's show love and support for these restaurants who are trying to survive at this time." And that concludes the e-comments that we have online on this topic.
Okay, and any emails, or is it that inclusive of emails?
That is inclusive of emails. I did not receive any emails on this particular topic.
Okay, thank you. So I did have one topic that came up that I'd like to get, we're not going to wordsmith this tonight.
Right.
But one thing that I'm a little confused on, or it seemed to be differing opinions. You said this is comparable to what they pay in Riviera Village per square foot. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the village.
Now Riviera Village, other than sales tax, the percent that Redondo gets, there's no other revenue coming from those, correct?
That's correct. Those are all private property. They aren't.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with and Leslie, I think maybe it was you who brought it up that said maybe we should jack it up more. A couple people said, I actually recommended, adding the infrastructure cost, but it does seem like, it's not apples to apples when we're comparing there, because for every additional dollar of revenue, they're bringing in, they pay more rent to the city directly. Plus, I think we get the TOT. I mean, not the TOT, but the sales tax out of it on top of that. Isn't that correct?
Sales tax to the city, not to the harbor fund, correct?
Right. To the general fund, which another pet peeve I have, but that's the way it is. So it's not apples to apples. We do benefit by them having more business there. And these are very constrained, leaseholds, much smaller than most of the village leaseholds.
Yeah, agreed. And I'll be candid. That was, when you look at the village permit process, they have the two different rates that they charge. If you are a business serving alcohol there, your fee is actually $12 a square foot. And so rather than, I'm guessing a lot of the businesses that are going to be operating here would like to serve alcohol if they have a permit that allows them to do so. We elected to not go with that higher alcohol-based rate, with the idea being that because we do get a percentage rent for most of the businesses that are down there, that would help offset that difference. So we set them all at the $6 rate, and then recognized that, we weren't charging the $12 rate in lieu of the fact that we were collecting some percentage rent.
Right. So thanks for clarifying that. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. It sounds like we're going to talk again about this. What I'd like to ask the commissioners is I'm going to make a motion to form a subcommittee and have a separate, outside of the Harbor Commission meeting, and I don't know if that'll get seconded or not, but before I make my motion, and realizing that we're about to head into the Harbor Amenities Plan Subcommittee, Tom, you volunteered to be on it. Does that still hold?
I'd like to apply also.
Okay, so we got Vicky and
Yes.
Tom, and
Yes, that does.
anybody else? I think we could have 3.
How about Matt?
I'll do
Yeah, I'd be
it.
glad to do it.
I like to do it as well. If Matt, if you want to do it, you can do it, but I'll gladly volunteer. Your choice.
The advantage of, and I'm not trying to steer anybody one way or the other, is I believe Commissioner Krazan, Walters, and Carlson are your working group appointees for the public amenities plan.
Right.
So Allahan, Bauer, and Kilroy, you don't have overlap, and it hopefully wouldn't be too taxing then.
Are you making my motion for me?
No, I'm just pointing out the obvious.
So moved.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we form a subcommittee of Matt, Vicky, and Tom to meet with staff and the business folks. And I don't know if we have any of the business folks still on, but it would be nice to, I assume, Stephen, one of your staff will communicate with them and set up the details of when that meeting would be.
Yes, absolutely.
And what I'd like the subcommittee to do is take that straw man and sit down with the business owners and staff and see if we can hammer something out to bring back to the commission and the city as a recommendation. Because I do think they're going to have a lot of good ideas. We won't have time to vet them in a meeting, and I think this is more efficient than having a separate workshop. So that's my motion, is to stand up a subcommittee made up of the folks I talked about before, Matt, Vicky, and Tom, to meet with staff and business owners to come back with recommendations to the commission on the straw man for the deck dining.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, Roger?
So I'm not sure if this is part of the motion or a direction to staff, but when this does come back and we do discuss it here and we discuss the fees again, I think we were pretty unanimous in wanting a uniform look and feel. And I'm thinking, you already mentioned barricades. It may not be the full Jersey barriers like we have down in the village. Those are really nice, but you can sit on them and that probably is too wide and too big there. So if as part of this, you could propose a barrier, maybe something that accommodates lights so that we had, a string of lights like we do down in the village, maybe even something that accommodates an overhead sunshade, those sun sails, to really define the area, or at least the barricades. If you could come back to us with a price for those barricades when this does come back to the commission, that would help me, know if $6 a square foot or $10 or whatever is fair, because I'd like to know how much the city and taxpayers are investing in infrastructure when we have this discussion again. And I get everything that the owner said. I agree with what Jim said. I'm just curious what the numbers might be, and it doesn't have to be to the decimal place, but we heard these folks say they were spending thousands of dollars on this. Would the city be spending 10,000, 100,000? I don't know. So.
Yeah, I think we could do that. Out of the subcommittee process, I would expect that one of the things we're all going to want to try to agree before we bring it back to you is, what is that perimeter boundary look like? How do we get that uniformity of the perimeter for each of these outdoor designated outdoor spaces? So once we know what that is, then it's just sitting down with our public works folks and hopefully working up some estimates on what it might take, or with an outside contractor, whichever is more efficient.
Yeah, and maybe it's more security too, which based on other events.
Based on that, Roger, anyway. There is one thing I'd like to at least clarify. I don't want to amend my motion, but just maybe add a little bit more detail. Director Proud, if it's possible to get a representative from law enforcement there, I think that would help. to see what the art of the possible is and what they might have on recommendations on security, because that came up, both business owners commented on that. And so I do think that's a major issue to discuss. And I don't want to limit the subcommittee on just one meeting if they think they have to, if it takes more than one to resolve this or come back. But I would like it to come back if possible by the next meeting. You think that's doable, Stephen? I see you calculating in your head.
I'm trying to think. So that's October 12th, if I remember right. So that's about 6 weeks from October 11th. About 6 weeks from now. Possibly, yeah.
I'd rather push it because eventually we can't approve. It's got to go to council. So
yeah, it still has to go to council.
Yeah.
I think we could coordinate, trying to get folks together. Probably depends on whether we have to do 1 or 2 meetings with the subcommittee as to whether that's a more viable, because, we still have to have time to draft it and then get your agenda published with materials in it. So that automatically shaves a week off of it right there. So that puts you at 5 weeks.
Yeah, and to kind of speed stuff along, would it be, if I reached out to a councilman, would it be okay for a councilman to sit in on this? Council person?
I don't think so.
It's one, it's not a.
Yeah. I don't know that there's anything that prohibits that, but yeah, that's sort of whether you'd rather kind of work this through a little bit and then bring it up to them, or.
Well, I think it just helps speed the process if one of them is involved and hears the conversation and why something's, why it came up the way it did to the commission, to the council.
Yeah,
I don't want to belabor this if that's too hard to do.
All right.
There's going to be too many moving pieces.
I think we can get we'll reach out to PD and get a law enforcement, type person there. I think that's certainly doable. We try to do that when we have peer association meetings. So I think that's something that's unfamiliar to them. I think we could definitely do that.
Okay. Roger, your hand's still up. Did you have something else you wanted to add, or?
No, thanks. Yeah, again, if we can come up with a WAG of costs, I wouldn't expect the fee to pay for permanent infrastructure in 1 year, but I'm just curious what the investment is. Mm-hmm. What's the first number and how many zeros?
Right. I would think we'd recoup it on revenue. Hopefully, recoup it on revenues. But
I would hope so too.
We should understand the cost going in. I agree. Okay. Let's see. I think we've exhausted the discussion, so I'd like to call the vote, and because of the action, I'd like to do a roll call vote.
All right, roll call vote on this in the order you're on my screen. Commissioner Krazan.
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Kilroy.
Yes.
Commissioner Callahan.
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson.
Yes.
Commissioner Walters.
Yes.
Commissioner Bauer.
Yes.
Chair Light.
Yes.
All right, we have a unanimous vote, 7-0.
Perfect. I think this was great. I really appreciate staff putting this together. I appreciate the businesses dialing in, and I appreciate the open dialogue on the commission here. I sense, everybody wants to make this work. So, and I like that we're being proactive instead of waiting till it's an emergency in front of us. So thank you very much.
Do we need?
So with that, we'll move to.
Do we need to receive and file this?
Oh, yes. So I'll entertain a motion to receive and file the staff.
Motion to receive and file.
The briefing.
Yeah, motion to receive and file.
I'll second.
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. Jump into L2, the discussion and possible action to improve the working group for the public amenities, to approve, not improve, the working group for the public amenities plan for King Harbor. Over to you, Stephen.
All right, Chair Light and commissioners, I'm not going to go through the full background on this. I think you're all very well familiar with the process that we've been engaged with, which ultimately culminated with a request for proposals, We received 5 proposals, and the selection committee that was assembled, that included the chair of the Harbor Commission, recommended SWA Group to the City Council for contracting for the preparation of the public amenities plan. That contract went to the City Council on August 17th, and it was approved by the council at that point. As you all know, the process that was proposed as part of this includes the creation of a working group. And that working group was intended to interact with the consultant team and to vet ideas and concepts prior to each community outreach effort. So, and Elizabeth, can you pull up the schedule that, not the public participation one, but their schedule, that's the 9-month schedule. I just want you to see, I think this is in your packets, but I want to make sure we put this up on the screen so that anybody who may be watching
I have a question on before we get started.
Sure.
I think there's a typo on January 2021. Shouldn't that be 2022?
On which document?
On the proposed community participation plan.
Oh, it probably is, yes. If that's certainly a typo. We'll take a look at that.
You don't have your flex capacitor working?
All right, here we go. So what I was starting to say is that this is the process that was proposed in the proposal, and it really tracks to the idea that we had in the RFP itself. Are you able to make this full screen, or is that as big as we can get it?
Here we go.
Okay, so really the key kind of items to be focused on here are, you see the working committee collaboration, it's item B, and those little dots that are on there represent 5 different meetings that the working group would have with the consultant team to, like I said, vet ideas, look at different concepts. And the idea is each of those meetings are intended to be structured to occur before the community workshops and the outreach. So those are the things that you see in the red boxes under C, community participation. So you see they sort of tend to bump along and track along with that process, so that those 2 pieces of the process really work hand in hand. The working group is seeing materials, and then those materials are then moving out into a more public forum, whether that's a community workshop, whether that's outdoor pop-ups, whether those are open houses, whatever format the community participation plan takes for each of those items, the working group is meeting before those things are starting to happen. So, and maybe we could just pop up the community participation plan just so we can take a look at that. I know this one, here we go. And yes, Commissioner Callahan, you are correct. That should say January 2022. So I did have a meeting with the SWA group maybe about 4 or 5 days ago, once the contract had been approved. We just had some very preliminary housekeeping items that we were taking care of, and one of which is the final community participation plan, which is really their first deliverable to us, is to tighten up the community participation plan and let us have a chance to take a look at that. And here you see the interrelationship between the working committee charrette number 1, working committee charrette number 2, and then up above the community workshop number 1. And then they follow this pattern where there's a working committee meeting, community open house, working committee meeting, community open house, working committee meeting. So they're staggering each other as we go along through the process. So there's always this back and forth of being able to get the input from the working committee before we go out to the public at large to get input from them. So just as a reminder, and you know this, but at your previous meeting, you selected 3 of the harbor commissioners, I just referenced that in the earlier item, to serve on the working committee: Commissioner Carlson, Commissioner Krazan, and Commissioner Walters. So those 3 members of the working committee were selected. And over the past, I'd say past 3 weeks, the chair and the vice chair and I have been communicating with each other to try to put together a recommendation for you to consider for the remaining members of the working committee themselves. The recommendation that you have in our staff report is that 4 of those members would be city staff. And they really are the city staff that are directly involved in the public amenities plan process. It's our office. It is the Public Works Department who is charged with implementing these things, and our Community Development Department, which is the planning department. We've also added one other additional city person, which would be a public safety person, to look at some of the implications of possible configurations. Is probably more related to some of the boat ramp conversations that have happened previously, but there may be other public safety considerations. You just heard some of your businesses have some concerns about safety issues. So we'd certainly want to consider those as part of the public amenities plan process. So then we turned to stakeholders, interested folks who have a role in the harbor that could provide some valuable input into the public amenities plan process. And the recommendation to you tonight is to have 3 additional people that would sit on the public amenities plan. We try to get some representation from different sectors within the harbor. The first is Jeff Jones. Jeff Jones works at Quality Seafood. He's been very active in the activities down on International Boardwalk. I think you heard the slip bar reference that they work with Quality Seafood on some of the activities that are happening down there. We've had a lot of good conversations with Jeff over the years, and he really cares about what happens down in the harbor itself. The second is Craig Stanton. You know Craig, he's been before you on several occasions. He's the manager of the Redondo Beach Marina, so he has operational responsibilities for the Marina and Basin 3, as well as the mooring field, and as well as the leasehold areas that comprise the Redondo Beach Marina. So Sambas, the Ruby's building, On the Rocks space, Captain Kidd. So that footprint falls under his jurisdiction as well for maintenance responsibility. So some of the areas that would be directly impacted by the public amenities plan, when we start to talk about the sport fishing pier, we talk about the lagoon, the boat ramp, those all fall within areas that Craig is very familiar with. He also used to run the sightseeing, the Voyager, from the harbor as well. And then Mark, I think you all know Mark. He's one of those people that needs no introduction, but is certainly a member of the King Harbor Yacht Club, can represent general boating interests, has been very active in his participation here at the Harbor Commission, at the strategic plan, at the City Council. So those were the recommendations, and that makes up about 10 people that would comprise the working group for the public amenities plan process. So we wanted to bring this to you tonight. Again, the chair and the vice chair and I have worked on this, but we wanted to bring it to you for discussion, thoughts. If there's other people that you think might be appropriate. We are trying to be mindful of the size of the working group, but if there are some thoughts you might have about other participants or the participants that we're recommending, we're open and amenable. I can tell you, I've talked to or emailed with the 3 people that are listed, Jeff, Craig, and Mark. They're all willing to serve, but if you think it's more appropriate for someone else, I think they would understand and would graciously give their seat up if that was the will of the commission. So with that, I want to open it up to you. We do have, I believe, folks here who would like to speak on this. If you're here to talk on this particular matter and you're on Zoom, if you could raise your hand, that would be great. I do have a couple of emails and I do have a couple of e-comments for this topic. So we definitely have a range of public input on this.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. So first off, before we get in, did you reached out to the Ginsburg side of the house and they weren't interested in participating, correct?
We did. So there was one of the recommendations that Chair, Vice Chair, and I had was to see if Dr. Ginsburg, who is the master lessee for the King Harbor Marina space, which includes the Bay Club, it includes Blue Water Grill, the apartment building complex, the boatyard, all of the slips that are in Basin 1 and part of Basin 2. We thought that their operations manager, Michael Aker, would be a good participant on this. He's been around the harbor for many, many, many years. Michael was flattered that we asked him, but his personal life is just a little too hectic right now to be able to participate on the working group. So he respectfully declined that invitation.
Yeah, my interest in at least exploring that was mole, they have a big stake in Mole B.
Correct.
And then what about Lanakila? Did you reach out to them or?
We did not have a direct reach out to Lanakila. I will tell you that we do have emails from Lanakila, and Moses is here. He's one of the people who would like to speak under public comment. So, but we did not have a direct contact out to Lanakila as part of the working group outreach.
Okay, and then I did have a conversation with Julie Cole from Waterfront Education. I'm not sure we'd want them to participate, but she'd be willing to if we thought that was a good thing to have. So with that, I'll open up to the other commissioners. Matt, I think you were up first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Light. I just noticed on the SWA's outreach for the community meetings, they had a couple little pop-ups planned. I guess that's like a pop-up tent or information and whatnot to get community input, let them know when the community meetings are. Is that about what that is?
It is. It could also take the form of actually, being out on the pier and interacting with people and doing some kind of on-site public outreach and communication directly out on the pier. I think that's a little more of what they had in mind, is trying to find some creative ways to engage the public and solicit input on the public amenities plan for the harbor. So that's what I think they're envisioning as part of that pop-up process.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
my
when they
only comment is you should
that's what they said is they wanted to set up like a little booth or stand and just talk to people who were participating in the harbor to get their feedback.
Right.
So my point is, if the harbor's ever going to be successful, we need to reach out to more than the people who are coming to the harbor now. The majority of Redondo Beach is north of 190th. And there really needs to be, they need to understand that they need to reach out beyond the immediate geographical area there of the harbor in order to really get community input as to what the residents of Redondo Beach are going to support in that area. So that's my only comment with regards to their idea of what they're thinking about with regards to community outreach. They need to expand their area.
So let me talk to that a little, Matt. I don't know that you guys got to see the proposal, but they certainly, they hired I don't know what the name is, but Trish Mercado, communications, and they're going to do outreach on social media as well. So I think, and they owe us an outreach. Well, they owe the subcommittee at least an outreach plan, and the city an outreach plan that will detail that more. So certainly the subcommittee will have a chance to weigh in on that if they think it's insufficient to get all the stakeholders that we'd want.
Well,
Stephen, I don't know if to add.
Like I said, I was just going by that one page. Obviously, I'm not really looking at their whole thing, but that's it. Thanks.
Stephen, did you want to add anything to that? Did I cover that?
No, I was just going to say that is their first that is their first deliverable, is an updated community outreach plan. So I think that'll have a little more detail in there in terms of what their actual approach is, and you will have an opportunity to take a look at that. So.
Okay, Leslie. You're on mute.
Too many buttons. I appreciated that you did reach out to Dr. Ginsburg. I think just for the subset of the Moonstone Park, it is important to have the stakeholders there. So omitting the outriggers was curious. And also, who is representing like Parks and Rec from the city on that? We talked about having two subcommittees, and I, at the time, wasn't sure, should we have two or not? I think it's fine that we have one from the commissioners, but maybe we want to pull in those Mole B stakeholders just for those targeted portions of the working group meetings from Moonstone Parks, and then I think that should include the parks, someone to represent besides the commissioners, someone representing the the residents' interest in the parks, and then the current other users of the park, the outriggers. And then I think that would be good for that part. And then I think the other additions you have seem fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. And Stephen, just to clarify, what you're looking for tonight is our acceptance of the working group makeup?
Yeah, I think we should. You know, it would be very, we could possibly stretch it to your October meeting, but the hope is that working group is going to meet in early to mid October. And so I would like to see if we could get some consensus around who might participate in. And I recognize that might require our office to do some outreach to somebody who maybe we hadn't thought of previously. So, if there's a strong sense, like to take Commissioner Cruzan's suggestion that maybe we want to add an additional, let's say, add the rec park director to the working group. Clearly Moonstone Park will ultimately be a rec park amenity. Seaside Lagoon is a rec park managed amenity. So there could be some definite value in having someone representing that department, which in turn is representing the interests of the community. If we could get some consensus around if there are any ads, who those ads would be, then I think we could hopefully set the group tonight so that when we're ready to get going, that group is already formed and on its way.
Yep. Okay. Roger, I see you put your hand up.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree with everything Commissioner Cruzan just said. I agree with adding a rep from the parks, and I'm also okay with having just one committee, but I would definitely like to include Lanakila as much as they would like to be involved, because nobody gets more of a vote on Moonstone, if not the harbor, than they do. Commission members may be unaware of how much time they spend in the harbor. They're a club of, I don't know, several hundred people, and they practice almost every day of the week, and they have long practices on weekends. It's like a varsity sport. I joined the first year I was a commissioner, and I couldn't keep up with it. It's a huge time commitment. I don't think any club or any group puts as many person hours in the harbor as they do. So whatever they need in Moonstone, I want to hear what they have to say. So I'm glad that Moses is on and will speak soon, and I will support whatever he says. Second question, regarding Seaside Lagoon. Now that we have state funding and a new program there, does that change Seaside Lagoon's role in this? Does that now become a separate project? Is that still? It still seems worthwhile to me to get amenities and see what people want there, but that thing has grown a lot since we last met.
Yeah, so I was going to report on this under the director's report, but it might be more appropriate to just touch on this right now. So as you may recall, when we were putting the budget together, so let me take you back a couple, 3 months, the budget included a decision package that was $50,000 in funding for visioning for Seaside Lagoon. When the idea being that, and my perspective is, I feel like we've gotten a little bit of a conflicting message from the council, because at one point I felt like they were very focused on Moonstone Park, and I feel like they've sort of shifted their priority a little bit, which that's fine, but it's shifted a little bit now to really sort of focus in on Seaside Lagoon. And that may be a function of the funding that we've received, knowing that we want to get busy with that and make sure we get access to it and we don't lose it. You're all very well aware of the budget motion and the $1 million and where the monies came from. And I will talk a little bit more about that in the director's report. But one of the things that has happened over the last, really just over the last 3 or 4 weeks, is there's been a push to try to use that $50,000 worth of funding to bring 2 different firms on board to help with the visioning exercise for Seaside Lagoon. it certainly can work into the public amenities plan process by getting some ideas. These are firms that maybe have more experience and expertise in aquatics and aquatics design. And to be able to tap into that expertise, start to do some visioning exercises for Seaside Lagoon, and then use those visioning exercises to help inform the scope and scale of the public amenities plan in terms of placement, size, location, and the various pieces for the lagoon itself. So you're dead on in the sense that it's a project that is receiving some additional focus and attention right now. Getting funding from the state is certainly, helping with that effort. Having the council provide additional funding helps put a little more money into that pot, and hopefully can get that process kind of jump started going forward. So that is out there and in the works right now, and it's still emerging and it's still changing. There may be an agenda item on September 7th. I think they're targeting an agenda item to talk about this at the city council meeting. I think all indications are that it'll make the September 7th agenda, although I don't know that positively yet. I probably won't know that till Wednesday, if that's going to ultimately make it on there. But the idea for that agenda item is to talk about three things: the funding that we received, the budget motion that you all made, the letter you wrote, and to revisit the budget allocation for Moonstone Park itself, and to see if the city council would like to take a different action related to how they've decided to fund it. Your letters do work. And then finally, the visioning component of this for the allocation of the $50,000 to just see what direction the council would like to go forward with. Do they want to allocate it to these two firms, or do they have some other thoughts in terms of how that visioning exercise might occur?
Anything else, Roger?
Thanks. Nothing else. I appreciate it.
So in my view, I think, I actually think this is a win-win. I think the subcommittee and SWA can focus less on what goes into, what's the final configuration in detail of Seaside Lagoon, which was going to be, you can do that just in that committee anyway, because that is in and of itself a big topic. But the integration of it with the rest of the elements, and that I always thought was the primary. How do you integrate these into one plan? Because I think each of these will take a more detailed life of their own for each particular amenity over time. So I think this actually dovetails together. So Leslie, your hand's still up. Is that a still up or is it a re-up?
This time it's still up. I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't see any other commissioners. So let's open it up to the public.
All right. Since there was a lot of conversation about Lanakila, let's let Moses go first. So Moses, I'm going to promote you to panelist. I have hit the button. You should be appearing here shortly. If you could unmute yourself, you are open to talk to the Harbor Commission.
Hello, Harbor Commissioners and Director Proud. Nice to be here with you all. Yeah, I appreciate all you guys are doing. It's well beyond my reach, so thank you for constantly fighting the good fight and looking for progress in our harbor. Lanakila, as many of you know, is based out of the Moonstone Park area, Mobi. I think for our understanding was that there was going to be a subcommittee within the public amenities plan, not really to try to sit where Mark Hansen or Craig Stanton or anyone else would be sitting, but specifically geared towards the Mobi area. We've worked for the last decade trying to go through different various plans, and we've worked with Director Proud for quite a while now. And the Coastal Commission, we worked with the Guthries, haven't really heard too much from the Ginsbergs, but our hope is that we can collaborate with the group that is coming in to plan and hopefully give them some guidance as to what is working, what isn't working, so we're not wasting any additional time. We've obviously seen many obstacles in our face, whether that's with the dock, the boat ramp, just a numerous amount of issue trying to come up with a real solid plan. Mark Hansen has been by our side for a good portion of this, and our goal is to, come to some sort of just some sort of way to help progress go forward and not really hold anybody back or make any issue. We just want to, determine our space down on Mole B, make sure that we're in line with everyone and create a nice park space and, move along our way. We really don't want to have that much involvement with the rest of the public amenities plan. I think although we have many members that are participants within the harbor, whether that's in the sailing side or in the restaurant industries over in the harbor, our focus would be specifically towards Molby if that would be suitable to the commission. Like I said, we're not really geared towards all of the project, specifically towards the Moonstone Park area. If that is helpful and productive for you folks, that's where we would really like to step in and hopefully share some of our advice for the last decade and guidance.
Thanks, Moses. Let me jump in a second and then I'll let you continue. Let me ask a question of Director Proud. Stephen, do you think it would be possible for at least those first two meetings to invite, Lana Kila rep and maybe compartmentalize, one section of that meeting to just cover Moonstone Park, and then they're welcome to stay or leave as the group moves on to other activities? Because I want to be sensitive. The council did want to go fast on Moonstone Park, and right now it looks like after the second meeting, that's the last chance to input on that before we see a pretty final draft. Do you think that's possible to work in? Do we lose Stephen? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry to say, yeah, sorry. I think when we start to get the agendas set for the working group and we know what topics are going to be covered, if there's, if Moses and Lana Kilo kind of want to just, really be focused on the Mole B space, Moonstone Park space, and not sit on the larger working group and kind of deal with all the other issues. I don't see why we couldn't, if we know that's what's going to be the topic of the working group in the upcoming community workshops, have them sit in on that particular working group session and be able to provide their input.
Well, it looks from that schedule, it would have to be those first two meetings, because after that, it's pretty fun.
Just kind of off and running a little bit. So
Moses, would that work for you?
Yeah, that would work for us.
Okay, I'll make a motion later, or one of the other commissioners can, but anything else you wanted to say to us, Moses? I just wanted to clarify that before we moved on.
No, thank you very much for having us. I sent an email and e-comments, so you can probably dismiss those. But like I said, really appreciate you guys working on, the harbor. I know it's been a long and tough process, so much appreciation to your guys' hard work. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate all Anakila does there to bring waterfront awareness. So keep up the great work.
Thank you. We'll be here.
Any commissioners want to ask a question of Moses before we let him go? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you, Moses.
Thank you.
Oh, Leslie?
Oh.
It may be too late if you had something for Moses.
I can try and bring him back.
Looks like he's still logged in. I was just going to say.
There we go. I just put him back. There you go, Moses. You're back.
All right.
I was just going to say, if there are any documents or, inputs from the past that help to describe kind of the nuances of the space and how it's used and how just the considerations that you have from a boating perspective on the land.
Yeah, we have a number of drafts, including the approved master plan from, I think it was 2011 or 2012. So we have a running set of different concepts and plans, stuff that we've shared with Director Proud and the Coastal Commission. So we had great progress. The waterfront thing really jammed us up big time, and or all of us, so, but we can certainly bring those documents together, and we can look at some of the issues where space became too tight to work the canoes. For any of you that don't know, our canoes are 40 to 45 feet long. We have a trailer that pulls in and out of that space. So some of the logistics to get our operations handled require the space, and that's really a key issue. We had some dock drawings that could impede the waterways. That was another area. So some of these details that we can put on paper and look really good may have fundamental issues with either the boaters or just the layout of the park area or our space, as well as the parking. Some of that has been eliminated with hopefully the potential boat ramp moving over to Mole C, or I think Mole C maybe now, but if it were on Mole B, it changes the dynamic there as well. But we can certainly provide documents, preferably before those meetings so that you had a chance to look at them. And then,
yeah, Moses, you had some good inputs during the Mole B discussion for the boat ramp. You had the overhead videos from a drone and some drawings of the maneuvering of the trailer. I think that would be good for the subcommittee to see.
Yeah, we have all that stuff still. So we, and then there's another gentleman, Brian Mitchell, which some of you know. He was an architect, landscape architect, and he helped us do that. And he sat in a lot of those committees with us, and I can bring him along or get some of his documentation to help support, our previous concepts and ideas. So.
And you guys really want to be co-located with Seaside Lagoon, right?
Well,
I'm joking.
As long as there's enough space. We do take up space. It's the hard part about our boats.
It was a joke, Moses.
I know. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that sounds great. To have that before that first meeting, the nuances, especially that the contractor may not appreciate on paper until he's, or visually until he sees it. So thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else before we say goodbye to Moses? So Moses, I would stand by for communication from staff because I think we're going to do something there.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we're now going to change Moses's status back to attendee. We have the next person to speak is Sheila Lamb. So Sheila, I'm about to promote you to panelist. You should be, there you are. If you want to unmute, you're able to talk to the Harbor Commission.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
You can, thank
Yes.
you.
Great. Sheila Lamb, Redondo Beach resident, District 4. Thank you for your efforts for this amenities plan. I'm very excited, especially about the community participation plan. This is very unique, I think, for Redondo Beach to have this level of plan put together. With 7 events, workshops, pop-ups for the community, and a real opportunity for the community to ask questions and offer feedback. Regarding the website, I do have a question about this, and I'm wondering if you are having a dedicated, separate website for the Harbor Amenities Plan and the Community Participation Plan. Granicus can help you with that. There are ways that there are actually other municipalities that use Granicus and put a separate website just for these special types of activities, such as the amenities plan and the community participation plan. It's easy for those of us who live in North Redondo to receive a website, a dedicated website to go on the website. We bypass the Redondo Beach website and go directly to the website. So that would be, so my question is that in the plan? So again, I want to thank you so much for the efforts to bring in the community for this very exciting development. Thank you.
So thank you, Sheila. Stephen, can we get an answer on that? From my recollection, I'm trying to look through the SWA proposal, was that they proposed a separate website for the activity, and that's what Mirakawa Communications was going to be responsible for.
Yeah, Chair Light, that's my recollection as well. I'd want to dig back into the proposal to say with 100% certainty, but I have the same memory that you do, that there was going to be a standalone communication portal on the web. So I think we're both remembering it the same way.
Yeah, and I would imagine the city would provide a link to it, but it's not a city website. They proposed one on their own. I remember them talking about that in detail. So
yeah, absolutely. We can try to find different ways to get people to kind of link right into that, including putting a splash page on the first page of the city's website so that, you don't have to navigate down 6 different pages to find it. And we can, work to try to get that on kind of the cover page so that folks find it right when they log in.
Well, Director Proud, this is really exciting step forward for Redondo Beach to have this best practice in community participation. And I would just want to thank you all so much for that.
Thank you, Sheila. I want to let you know that the city's actually been very open with the Harbor Commission on this as well. We helped write the RFP and we sat in on the source selection. So it's been a very open process. It's a welcome change all the way around. So I appreciate your comments there.
You're welcome.
Okay, any questions from any of the, I don't see any hands up. So I think that's it, Sheila. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments.
All right, and then the last person to speak, last but not least, of course, is Mark Hansen. So we're going to promote Mark to panelist.
No, wait, he's already on the subcommittee. Do we have to listen to him again?
Well, public comment is equal access. So Mark, you are available, and if you want to unmute yourself, you can address the Harbor Commission, Mark.
I'm just teasing him.
All right, there we go. We're unmuted. Oh, okay, I'll just leave my sailboat picture up there. You know what I look like. Hello, Director Proud and Commissioners, Mark Hansen, King Harbor boater. I was very encouraged by your discussion on the 1 or 2 commission. I think you've got a great direction there. My biggest concern was the outrigger canoe clubs, and I think you've got a great idea, where compartmentalize, maybe put them at the beginning of the meeting so they can come in, do their stuff and head out. So I just think that's a great direction you're taking. Related to that, particularly on MOB, I want to mention that back in 2012, when we City Council approved the MOB Master Plan, super deep activists on that were a couple of the city sailing instructors, and the plan at the time was to create a permanent home for them also out on MOB. They're kind of been treated like a poor stepchild over the decades, moved all around the harbor, sometimes with their boats up on rocks against the bulwarks. So that's a big suggestion I want to make, that when we work on the MOB part, that we maybe find a couple of the sailing instructors and or those folks from the Redondo Beach Sailing Club, because as we all know, they're trying to save their program over there. So I think we should have them attend those MOB sections also. Then on the subject of King Harbor Marina, although Mike Aker is busy, we still do need to talk to them. The MOB Master Plan included some dry storage space just for small centerboard sailboats, and that was all predicated on really 2 things that King Harbor Marina, Sean Guthrie, was very involved with, which was that they were going to accommodate the launching of those small boats down their gangway. This would be no trailers, no outboards, just little boats you can hand launch. And they had also offered to move their lease lines to accommodate a perfect layout. So we had the perfect setup for the outriggers and for the launching of the sailboat. So we are going to need to talk to them at some point to preserve those parts of the plan. Next subject, looking at the three, commissioners we're putting on, the only thing kind of conspicuous is that, Jim Light's been such a workaholic and so involved in so many things. And so I think we just got to keep our eyes open to how we avail ourselves of all his expertise. The biggest one that jumps out to me is that he's one of the co-authors of Measure C. And I can tell you over the years when we were talking about boat ramps, I've been in the middle of conversations with both Stephen Proud and back when Senator Cowell was around with them. And people would ask me questions. Well, could we do the parking this way? We could do it that way. Well, I would run over to either Niels Narodheim or Jim Light and simply ask the question of the authors, can we do it this way? And that was hugely valuable. So I just want to, make sure that, every time we start thinking about what we can or cannot do, we've got a heck of a resource right here in Jim Light that can interpret what we can or cannot do on that zoning. Next item, I had in my own pencil notes had written down Harbor Association before I saw tonight's agenda item. So it was great to see that we've got Jeff Jones from Quality Seafood. And I guess the only question I would pose to the waterfront director is, I originally wondered if we used Chris Bredesen, who's now the president of the Harbor Association. Can Jeff Jones, fill that need to have somebody that will talk to all the folks in the association? Next item is on the staff. Fully understand who's on there, but I'm going to support the comments made by a couple of the commissioners. Yes, it absolutely seemed like we should be talking to the Rexon Park folks through the community services director. So I think, again, when we're talking about either Molby or about the lagoon, that we should have them in on those meetings. Finally, I think it was Commissioner Kilroy mentioned, outreach. And one of the challenges we have is that, one of the crown jewels of this project will be the boat ramp, and the people who use it most are the small power boaters and particularly the anglers. We have in our neighborhood the King Harbor Marlin Club, Southwest Anglers, South Bay Anglers. I'm in communication with all of them. And I don't know if we wait all the way until the community meetings to pull them in, or should we find a way to pull them in earlier? There was a gentleman, I think his name was Jeff Gilbert, who belonged to, I believe it was Southwest Anglers, and he showed up to a lot of our community meetings. So that, when we're thinking about, where are we missing anybody, maybe that's the biggest one that jumps off to me. You've got, several of us boaters on here between Commissioners Carlson, Shazan, Craig Stanton, myself, but maybe one more, person specifically from that small powerboat angling world, and particularly someone who belonged to one of these organizations, where they could bring those people out to our community meetings and serve as a great liaison. That's all I got. Great job, everybody. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Any questions for Mark? So Mark, I just wanted to comment, and I'll give you a chance to rebut, but one of the reasons, we picked who we did was, you don't want the committee to be too big. You want this thing to move fairly rapidly. There's going to be, there's more meetings than usual, but it's still limited. So you want to streamline the process. My thought on who we picked was that the individuals we picked, and particularly yourself, is the ability to outreach to people who aren't on the committee in between to represent their equities until we get to the real, the very open public sessions where anybody can participate. So that's, we didn't want to make the committee too big. So, and I'll give you a chance to opine on that.
Oh yeah, fully understand, Jim, and I understand the weight that is on my shoulders, why I've been put on this. And yes, I will. As you know, I've got a list of hundreds and hundreds of the boaters and business folks in the harbor, and I promise you, I'll be working my tail off to make sure they all know what's going on and show up, including those very important trailer boat, powerboat anglers.
Yeah. Well, all three of the Harbor Commission subcommittee members have contacts as well, so you shouldn't have to do all the heavy lifting. Okay. Anything else for Mark from anybody? Okay, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
And I'll just say as you know, subcommittee chair, I'll do my best to make sure that Mark feels comfortable speaking up.
All right, on that note, I'm going to change this role back to attendee.
Is there anybody else who wanted to speak live?
I don't see anybody else with a hand up, and so I think we've covered all of those. And I will say the two emails that I received on this topic, one was from Moses, who I believe said he's already spoken, and he also put in an e-comment, so I think he's covered that. The only thing left to be read into the record would be the e-comment, and Brian Mitchell sent an email and an e-comment, which I believe were the same. So let me read Brian's e-comment.
Well, first off, is it lengthy?
No. Maybe two sentences. It's okay. Brian Mitchell. He says, I recommend Moses Ramler, Lanakila OCC president, be selected as a member of the working group as a stakeholder on Mole B. He has been involved in the Mole B planning for a number of years, and his input would be invaluable in his fast-tracked portion of the planning process. So that's the comment.
Okay.
Real quick, Stephen, I think you accidentally popped Matt into the attendees list and kept Mark as a panelist.
I knew I'd take this place over.
So we'll
Mark wasn't going to say anything, though.
Substituting for Matt.
That's what happens.
Start with an M.
That's what happens when you try to multitask here. Okay, let me go get Matt out of the.
You could have texted him, Elizabeth, and not made him look so bad.
I don't know if he's checking his phone. I want to make sure Matt can vote.
Hey, Matt, we're sorry we put you in the timeout zone there for a second.
Yeah, I felt like I got put in the dog house. And to make matters worse, my connection's been kind of going on and off here a little bit. So I'm sitting there trying to email you back. I think you just dropped me out.
Yeah. Okay. I think we got it.
I won't take it personally.
Well, we already voted, so thanks for your input, Matt. Just kidding. Just kidding.
So, that's all right. So that's the end of the e-comments. Let me just check my email one last time. Brian had a little more detail in his email, but I think you get the drift of what his comment was.
Okay, and these will be available to the subcommittee, right?
The emails?
Yes.
Yeah, it was the only thing was it was still just an email recommending that Moses be selected to the advisory committee. It just says he's a little more familiar with the conceptual design process to me. So that's the same comment.
So I'd like to propose a motion that we accept the additional members of the subcommittee as recommended by Director Proud, that we ask Director Proud to also ask a representative from Rex and Park / Community Services to participate, and that we reach out to Lanakila to participate in a compartmented capacity related to Mole B.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? No? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
All right, roll call vote in the order you're on my screen. Commissioner Callahan.
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson.
Yes.
Commissioner Walters.
Yes.
Commissioner Bauer.
Yes.
Commissioner Krazan.
Yes.
Commissioner Kilroy.
Yes.
Chair Light.
Yes.
All right, we will reach out to Rec and Park and Lanakila. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Another good discussion by the commission and great job by staff. Really appreciate it. Now moving on to L3, the director's report.
All right, I got a lot here. I'm going to try to get through it, but it's been a little while since we've had a time to chat. So let me kind of rip through some of these things. So City Council, since we last met on July 13th, we had 3 things that went to the council: a lease for a retail operation on International Boardwalk called Mermaid's World. We did a short-term lease for the On the Rocks building so that the Beach Life Festival could utilize that for the festival itself. And we approved, or the council approved, a consent to assignment for the Fisherman's Wharf lease. That lease has now transitioned from Leo Postolnikov to the gentleman, Mr. Kwan, who runs the Pacific Fish Market out there. He's now the master leaseholder. So he purchased that lease out from underneath Leo. Then on the 20th of July, we did another small lease for Pier Plaza for a legal firm called Shaw Kopecki. And at that same meeting, the contract for the Falconer was approved. There was some discussion, and just so you're aware, the council directed us, rather than come back every year for annual renewals, they'd like us to just do a 5-year contract next time. So, which we're happy to do. So we'll get some bids. We got 3 bids this year for that service, and the current contractor on the wing falconry was the most attractive bid, and so we recommended them for approval. Council agreed, and then the next time we go through this process, it'll be for a much longer term contract. At the August 10th meeting, there were commission applicant interviews, and then at the August 17th meeting, as I indicated earlier, the SWA group contract was approved by the City Council. Upcoming council items, we have 3 leases going to the City Council next week. One is Gung Ho Online Entertainment America. Some of you may know the Gung Ho name. They're a gaming company that has a presence on the internet. The second one is Najas, a renewal for Najas, and a renewal for Savoir Faire, which runs the Language Institute up on Pier Plaza. We do have some items coming.
Is Gung Ho up on Pier Plaza?
What's that?
Where's Gung Ho?
They're going to be on Pier Plaza. They'll be taking office space on Pier Plaza as well. Yes.
Okay.
Then I mentioned the discussion of Seaside Lagoon. I'll just touch on that, as I mentioned earlier, it's for the $50,000 budget allocation for visioning. Is to give an update on the funding that was provided. And then probably the thing that is most near and dear to your hearts is consideration of the budget motion, whereby $500,000 was redirected from the CIP project for Moonstone Park into Seaside Lagoon. We're bringing that back to them for discussion to see if they would like to reconsider that motion and perhaps take a different motion. And we've provided them some options for their consideration. So that should be on the September 7th agenda, but like I said earlier, I'm not positive until probably Wednesday of this week to know for sure that that's the date that will be heard. So right now it's a TBD, but looking like it's going to be September 7th. And then there also to be determined, ultimately there will be a new contract that comes to the City Council for an updated structural and seismic assessment of the pier parking structure. We last did this about 5 years ago. We think it's a good idea to do it again, especially in light of the tragedy that occurred in Florida with the collapse of the structure there. There's a renewed interest in the structural integrity and seismic integrity of some of the structures that we have. So we'll be bringing that to the City Council for a contract for their consideration. Again, date to be determined. We just had a meeting today with the contractor, so we hope that'll be coming probably sometime in September, likely the 3rd meeting in September, I'm thinking, just looking at the calendar.
Where would that budget come from?
So we do have a little bit of money. There's a continuing capital improvement program that is related to the parking structure. So that's the likely source of the funding for that. I'd probably need to talk to Public Works and make sure that that's where they're intending to pull it from. If not, if it was a new contracts and professional services account, we didn't include that in this year's budget. So that would be something that would take a 4/5 budget modification to provide funding for that. The proposal that we have, I believe, and don't quote me on this, is something in the $50K range for that scope of work. Might be a little bit less than that, might be a pinch more, but my recollection is that's the number that they're working with for that potential contract. So that's kind of the City Council action stuff that's happened and is upcoming. Want to move on to a few miscellaneous items and follow-up items. Probably first and foremost, you all are aware of the shooting that occurred on the pier. It's unfortunate that incident occurred. I'd like to tell you that I have more information than what's been reported in the press, but I don't, since it's an ongoing investigation. The pier was closed Wednesday night and into Thursday morning. We did make the decision to cancel the Thursday night concert. Saturday's concert went on as scheduled. I did send a text to the chief this morning and asked maybe at your next meeting if he would be willing to come and provide a public safety, or representative of the department come and provide a public safety update. We're probably due for one anyway. At that point, they may be able to share more information regarding the incident and what occurred with you than I can share with you tonight. A tragic situation, and unfortunately someone had to lose their life. So, they're still working it through and working through their investigative process. So I don't have a lot more to share with you this evening other than just letting you know that it's ongoing.
So sorry to break in, but I think if we do have him, it would be nice to hear not so much, well, certainly what happened, but what any changes, that they anticipate in security.
Yeah, and you've obviously heard a lot tonight about vandalism and other issues that are happening down there as well. Well, that's the first item that I had under kind of my miscellaneous updates. Next item, dredging. I reached out to our Public Works Department to get an update on where we are in that process. They informed me that the Army Corps of Engineers is still finalizing the draft permit. They have been recently in contact with the project manager for that permit and are trying to move it along. The one thing that is needed and is a precursor to the Army Corps issuing their permit is the 401 water quality certification from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. The Regional Water Quality Control Board has told the Public Works staff that certification would be issued via an executive signature, but so far that hasn't happened yet. So there's both just kind of work effort at the Army Corps, but then there's a sequencing issue where that 401 certification needs to occur before the final Army Corps permit is issued. So they're actively working the issue. I'll be candid, we're getting a little concerned just given the length of time it's taking and the windows that we have to do the work, given some of the constraints associated with the CBAS program and some of the other things that you've commented on. So, being able to get that permit to us then allows us to really start drafting the plans and specifications that we can then put into a contract that we can send out for bid. So we really need to know what the Corps is going to require before we can go out and solicit contractors for the work itself. So starting to get a little concerned that window is getting very small and hopefully we'll get this one across the finish line before it causes us to have to bump the dredging for what could be an extended period of time. So we're working that issue, and I know our Public Works staff in particular is working hard on that. Changing gears, Beach Life Festival. We're 2 weeks away from the festival. So the plan is that they're going to generally follow the same setup and footprint that they used on the original festival back in, what seems like a really long time ago. But the intent is to do that. I will tell you there is one change that they are proposing to the footprint, and that would be closure of the access road behind Seaside Lagoon. So where the hand launch facility is, that is where they had most of the incidents that PD had to address, was people using that back access road behind Seaside Lagoon, climbing fences, going back there, doing things they shouldn't be doing. We've reached out to the Redondo Beach Marina. That's always our alternate whenever the hand launch is closed, is to allow people to launch from the Redondo Beach Marina area. That said, that's going to be an incredibly busy area that day. I did reach out to Majestic King Harbor Marina to see if there might be a possibility of using some of their space. I didn't get a positive response back from them on the ability to do that. The next best choice is probably the Basin 3 launch location, which is the area we use when the hand launch has been pulled out for service. But I can tell you that's going to be a very, very busy area. So that's the only footprint change that I'm aware of. Otherwise, I think we're generally working with similar kinds of footprints and setups as was previously done. There's probably some tweaking of the interior layout a little bit. I do know they have a couple of a new entertainment area that they've included kind of back in the lagoon space. So that's on that. Skate park. City did an RFP for the skate park to do a design build contract. We only received one proposal. It came from Spawn Ranch, who are the people we've been working with, and they were the ones who came and made a presentation to you. So it worked out in many ways quite well that they were the only respondent. They've been working on putting together the design build contract. I got a text from the public work director today, and they're hopeful that it could be on the September 7th meeting. Again, that might drag another meeting or two, but I think we're looking at September for that contract to go to the city council for their consideration and hopeful approval so that we can start moving forward on that particular project as well.
Are we going to get, is it going to come to us with the final design? That's what we talked about.
Yeah, I've talked to them, and I've reminded them that there needs to be a check-in with the Harbor Commission as part of the design process. And I think they are looking at where in their scope of work is the best place for them to kind of come and talk to you. So I continually remind them that, one of the things that you were promised was an opportunity to see how some of your comments were responded to as part of the next round of design. So we're trying to keep that in the forefront and make sure that they do that and bring that back to you.
Yeah, we want to make sure there's a lot of outreach on that meeting so that the peer businesses have a chance to, at least we can hear if they have any concerns.
Sure. Yeah, we'll make sure we're, like I said, I think we did an internal meeting and I brought that up, and I think that was incorporated into their scope of work because they just did their proposal, and I don't know that their proposal had that explicit step in there. And so we met internally as staff, and I reminded our public works folks that was something that was your expectation based on the first conversation you had with them regarding the skate park. So I think they've amended that scope of work to include that back in there. Okay. Wanted to just give a short update on sort of bans on boats. I know that's a concern that the Harbor Patrol has. They've created a process whereby folks would submit an application. I think as Jason may have told you about and reminded you at the last meeting, the Harbor Patrol continues to believe that the mooring location allows for a safer event location that serves all the interests in the harbor. Despite the fact that there's an application for processing it, there is no application fee. So it's really just a notification, if you will, for a potential sponsor to let our public safety folks know that they'd like to have an event out in the harbor. That said, if they're using the mooring field, we do charge for the daily rate for using the mooring. So there's no application fee, but if they're using a mooring, then they pay for the mooring fee. So one party, for example, took up 19 moorings at $24 each. So that's really the only fee that we're collecting is our standard mooring fee. And my understanding is Craig, who operates our mooring, hasn't received any complaints or pushback regarding those mooring fees. So that's kind of the update on where we are. Like I said, the Harbor Patrol feels like that mooring location allows for the free flowing of the harbor, letting people kind of get in and out. Not sure what that means in terms of the quality or the experience, but they feel like it's a safer operation that way. Then an update on Yacht Club Way, Harbor Drive intersection. Commissioner Callahan, perhaps, and actually Commissioner Carlson. I'm not sure if you guys are tied for this being your favorite topic or not, but I think I have good news. So the news that I have is that the intersection plans are almost finalized. So whereas before we weren't even into the design process, we're now at the point where the plans are getting finalized and our public works folks are reaching out to their signal maintenance contractor to see if they are actually able to install the upgrades, whether they have the appropriate expertise and equipment, because I think that would be a more efficient process for them if they can just use their single signal maintenance contractor to do that. If they don't have that expertise or equipment to do the installation, then they'll probably have to go back out and secure a new contract to do the installation work themselves. So it's moving along. I don't have a timeline, but they are moving on the process. So I think we're making some progress finally after, I'm not sure how many years you've been asking me about this, but I think they're making progress now on it. So
is there a design solution we can look at or read about? Or?
I don't have it yet. They're finalizing the design plan, so I don't have that yet. But I know for sure they're trying to address the concerns that you all raised. about how that intersection operates. Roger, for some reason, you don't have sound.
Yeah, we see your lips move.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Vicky brought this up at my first meeting, which was like 4 years ago. So Vicki had been working it for a while before I joined. I would also like to see the plan because I'm concerned if the signals are so complex that our current very complicated signal people can't install it. It doesn't sound like a good solution to me. I'm hoping for like right on red.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen the plans. They're still in the finalization stages, and so I'm not sure what improvements or changes or contracting services may be necessary. And our current signal maintenance contractor, just may be very limited in terms of their scope of what they do. And so the question, because I shot an email back to them and I said, I just want to make sure I understand your comment. Are you basically saying you're moving forward, you'd like to use this contractor if you can, but if they don't have the equipment or expertise to be able to do it, that you have to go get a different contractor? And they said, yes, that's exactly what the process would be.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day I don't have to actually report on this one anymore. And then I wanted to make you aware that the Coastal Commission is accepting public input on a guidance report that they've issued. It's related to transportation and infrastructure and that may be vulnerable to sea level rise. So they're calling it sea level rise planning guidance. And they've issued a document which is intended to be used by local jurisdictions as a guidance document kind of for planning going forward, but they're seeking input to help refine some of that guidance. The challenge is it's on a fairly short commentary window. I think we didn't get the document until maybe a week or a week and a half ago, and they're looking for comments by September 24th. So we haven't even had a chance to crack the cover yet. We'll be taking a look at that in our office, our public works folks. It's mostly related to infrastructure and transportation, so it's not kind of sea level rise as a big topic. It's really focused in on resiliency related to those kinds of systems. But they are seeking public input. So if that's something you're particularly interested in and taking a look at and maybe commenting on individually, I wanted to make sure you knew that that was out there and were aware that that's something they're looking for some input on.
Was the city looking to respond, or are you guys generating a response?
We haven't coordinated yet on a response. And, I think mostly because everybody's been caught up in a few other things. So my intent is to kind of take a look at it and see what's in there. It may be our department, and it may be more public works related. It's kind of hard to say because it's a transportation and infrastructure guidance document. So I think until we crack the cover and really get a chance to dig into it a little bit, Chair Light, I don't know the answer to your question. It may just be because it's a guidance document, we don't have comment. Maybe everybody's comfortable with the guidance that they're providing, or we may. I just don't know the answer to that right now.
Is it possible that if the city does decide to respond, that you fold in, I think Roger's been our biggest bird dog on that. If you fold in Roger for least comment?
Yeah, I could probably shoot it out,
because we don't have time for another Harbor Commission meeting.
No, and that's the challenge, right? So that's why I wanted to sort of at least flag it, because it's not directly related to Redondo Beach. I mean, this is statewide policy guidance on.
If you're okay with that, does anybody on the commission have, and especially Roger, do you have heartburn with that?
I'm kind of in the same boat. I haven't even cracked the cover on it yet.
Yep.
If I see something I don't like, I'll comment as an individual human being, certainly not as a commissioner, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, that was why I really brought it to everyone's attention, is I think it's, I knew particular Commissioner Carlson, you're interested in this topic. So I wanted to make sure, one, that you knew it was out there, and two, that there was an opportunity for comment that was, the window was September 24th, I believe it is.
Mostly I'm curious to see if it matches the guidance we've seen previously that Noble brought to us of whatever it is, 8 inches to a foot by the end of the decade, and, on and on.
Yeah, agreed. I think we'd like to.
Yeah, I just, I would welcome, in the spirit of collaboration like you've been doing, Director Proud, if the city's going to respond, just fold in Roger before you before you do that to see if he has any inputs.
Okay, we'll take it.
I'd appreciate that. That's not a motion or anything like that. But
I got you.
Thank you.
Apologies, just making them up. No. All right, and then I believe that's my miscellaneous, and then just wanted to note some upcoming events. Due to COVID, we did cancel our movie nights. We had movie nights scheduled for every Friday for the month of September. That's been canceled. Beach Life, I've already mentioned, that's happening. Kite Festival is coming up on September 19th, and then the car show on September 26th. So it's going to be a busy month. We got something pretty much every weekend after Labor Day weekend happening down at the pier. And then finally, our upcoming meetings. This meeting was a consolidation of the August meeting and the September meeting. Since we knew the chair was going to be absent for the September meeting, we consolidated these two, and I had a conflict for the August meeting, so I appreciate the accommodation. Our next meeting, as I mentioned earlier, then puts us at October 11th. And we are going to be looking at opportunities to talk about something related to sea level rise. Not sure yet what it is, but I've committed to the vice chair that we're going to start to think about what steps we might be able to take to start to open the conversation about sea level rise, and steps that the commission and staff may be able to take to start to address this topic in a more comprehensive way, whether that's additional condition assessments, whether that's trying to act on some of the work that's already been done. I think we're going to put our heads together and figure out what we want to bring to you as a possible discussion item related to sea level rise. Other than that, I can't tell you right now that I have any particular burning topic for that meeting, but stuff always comes up. I imagine by then we'll give you an update on where we are in the public amenities plan process. That'll probably be a staple on every one of your agendas now for the next few months, to let you know how that process is progressing. So, and I'm sure, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll probably do a public safety update as well. So just off the top of my head, I think we've at least got probably those three items. Oh, and we have election of officers happening in October. I almost jumped the gun on the chair and scheduled it for this meeting. Thankfully, Lori and Elizabeth were looking out for me, and you, Jim. I almost cut you off an extra meeting. But that'll also,
you're that ready to get rid of me.
Yeah, that'll also be in October. That'll be in October as well. So we've got election of officers then as well. So, and with that concludes my report. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Director Pratt. One thing I wanted to bring up on the bans in the harbor. I got feedback from the guy who heads those up or leads them that he got charged by the city. Is that
charged?
Can you shed any light on that?
Cited, charged, or charged?
Cited, yes.
I don't have any insight to that citing. We can certainly look into that a little bit further. We did reach out to Harbor Patrol to kind of get some feedback on how that process was going, and they didn't mention a cite being written, but let me double check.
Well, I don't think it was the Harbor Patrol. He said it was from the city attorney.
Oh, well, so I do know when we were having these conversations, so gosh, and that I'd have to dig a little bit deeper, because that may be related to some of the earlier concerts that were happening. I know that the PD and the Harbor Patrol were working together to prepare some consolidated reporting that was going to be advanced to the city attorney's office, but that was the last I had heard of it. So let me see if I can find out. Maybe that's why we didn't hear anything from the Harbor Patrol. Maybe that's the reason.
Yeah, he talked to me at a yacht club event. And then I also heard from some boaters that the event was not as fun at the mooring field, not from I can see it being not so much fun, but the fact that when you're on the moorings, you're spread out laterally and the band's playing out the back of the boat. So it's hard to hear once you got a couple moorings away. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's something to bring back to let the operators talk to the commission or, what we could do in the future to at least hear that concern. But I don't think anybody here wanted to see them shut down, just controlled so they were safe. And so there weren't multiple at the same time. So, I'm sensitive to those concerns. If we've made it so constricted, it's no fun anymore and of no value. I don't think that was the intent. Well, I know that's not the intent.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's an item for the next meeting.
And maybe we, if we're doing a public safety update, maybe we start by just, reconnecting back with the Harbor Patrol and, you all can express your thoughts related to it and then see if there's any modifications that need to be made to the process that we're currently involved with.
Okay, that's the only thing I had. Roger, your hand's up.
Yeah, thanks. I was curious about status of paying for parking in the Seaside Lagoon parking lot. If that's going to get the new system and the new numbers after the festival, and if you had looked into the alternative flow for the hand launch.
We have not. So the alternative flow for the hand launch, we were kind of working with Public Works on that. I don't have any update on that for you for this meeting. We will be moving forward with, we kind of wanted to let Beach Life, get in and get out before we started looking at the Redondo Beach Marina parking lot. We'd already done, just so you know, we'd already done a lot of legwork with our parking enforcement people, looking at, expansion of our current parking technology that we have in the garage to that location, picking out locations where we could put some of those centralized parking units. So we'd actually done a fair amount of work with them. And so we just need to pick that back up again. There was some hiccups related to the Public Works Department in terms of once we restripe that parking lot, we trigger some new ADA requirements that may present some challenges for us. And so that's where we are right now in the dialogue on that, is trying to see how we can move forward with restriping and still meet our ADA obligations within the parking lot. But it's been elevated, as you know, to a capital improvement project. So that also helps us in the process as well. So haven't forgotten about it. Work is still progressing. Probably pick it up more in earnest once we get past the Beach Light Festival and we don't have them tearing down poles and driving stakes into it, because we're going to have to reseal and then restripe and paint numbers. So we didn't want any of that work to get destroyed as part of this effort.
I saw it had gone in on Mole B, although I'm not sure if that's City or Ginsburg.
No, so that's the leaseholder. So,
Okay.
Ginsburg and the leaseholder there has decided to implement a similar program to what we're doing in the village, where you can pay for parking on a mobile app. So they've utilized that. All their public parking spaces now is pay by phone. So if you go out there onto Mole B and you park in one of the public spaces, then they're all tagged and labeled with signs and numbers. So they have that system that they're implementing there. But that's the private lessee who's working on their leasehold space.
Thanks.
Is that it, Roger?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Tom?
Yes, thank you, Chair Light. Director Prado, was wondering if there's any update on the Charge Ready program through SCE, and if we're looking into getting a bunch of L2 chargers installed in the public parking lot.
That's something that we do through our Public Works Department. I got the information that you sent me and I sent it out to them. Let me circle back with them and see if they've done anything with that in the interim period of time. I don't have an update for you as part of this meeting, but let me see what I can find out for you. That installation work is something that they do. And so it's a question of whether they're interested in moving forward with that and then applying to the grant program. So let me circle back on that one and I'll have to get back to you. I may do that separately in a separate email if that's okay.
No problem. And also know that part of the program, actually, Southern California Edison would even pay for the install, but so it's really quite the opportunity to get, several hundred L2s. And given the numbers of electric car, the population of electric vehicles is going to start ballooning, it'd be great to have those down there and attract the, these more people down to the pier.
Yep, got it.
That's it for me. Bye.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Okay, I think we meandered a little bit there. I assume, Director Proud, there's no items from staff?
No.
Okay, and I think we've been kind of handling referrals to staff and commission items, but I'll go through the list once. Matt, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, muted. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Referrals to staff, that you're right. That's what it seemed like we got into. So everyone, I'm sure, knows about the 17 million gallon sewage spill coming out of Hyperion Water Treatment Plant. What you don't know is that that spill was probably 10 times larger than that. It's just not been reported that way. I've gotten some information from people I know acutely aware of the situation of what happened and what went on. Regardless, my question and referral to staff really is, and we've had now multiple times spills from sewage of varying sizes around our harbor. And I know there's all these procedures of who to call and who to notify with regards to Cal EPA, Regional Water Quality Control Board, et cetera. And this came up once before. So my question really is to staff, do we have a system in place of notifying boaters and other people who might actually be in the water when one of these spills take place? We had one, Manhattan Beach had a lift station malfunction some years back, put 1 million gallons of sewage, and I'm talking raw, untreated sewage into the water locally. And the Hyperion treatment was a mile, I think was being discharged a mile offshore, and it comes right down into our harbor area. So I guess my question is, what do we know? Do they notify us? Do they give us a call? What do we do about it? Did we do any testing to see what the bacteria levels were either in our harbor or offshore? I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, what I would probably have to do, Commissioner Kilroy, is bring in the folks who are most knowledgeable about this and kind of deal with this on a regular basis and know the process and protocols, which really is Public Works. So I can't answer your question directly tonight, but if you'd like me to, I could send a note to them and see if they might be willing to come to the Harbor Commission and just, talk with you about probably more globally what happens when we have a spill and how's it addressed and how are the notification, what's the notification process. And then to the extent they have information directly related to the Hyperion spill, maybe they could communicate that to you as well. So I can take that as a referral back to our Public Works folks and see what I can get back to you with.
Please, and I guess what I'm looking for is, probably isn't part of Public Works response, is what is the protocol for notifying boaters in our harbor and people nearby? Do we use our harbor patrol? Who do we use and how do we do it to notify? Because it's going to happen again, whether it's a lift station in our own harbor area, whether it's one from a nearby city or something much larger scale like Hyperion, whether it's sewage or any other kind of toxic spill. I know we follow all the protocols for notifying other agencies, but it seems to be what's missing is notifying of the public. Mm-hmm. So yes, if you would please get back to me on that at some point in the future, that'd be great.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had that question before, and especially like the hand launch boat ramp users and Wanakila, the people who are, right at the water level and dipping their hands and other parts of their body in it.
Well, I agree. And I'll tell you, the Hyperion water treatment spill might have been, a number of miles away, but the volume was so incredible and it wasn't really dumped that far offshore.
Yep. And it all flows our direction.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, Matt?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Vicki?
Nothing.
Okay. I was going to say Elizabeth House, but
I'm sure she has a lot to say.
Steve?
Nope, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, Leslie,
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Roger,
I'm good. I did mine during the director's report and got us off track. Thank you.
okay, Tom.
I'm good as well. Thank you.
Okay, and that's all I had. So good meeting again, everybody. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to 6:30 on October 11th.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thanks, everybody. Good meeting. And